Hey everyone, this is Brian. Changing it up a little bit again. I have another special guest for the start of the video for Finding Dory. You may know him. This is Samuel Thornbury. Say hello to the folks out there, Sam.
Hey everybody. I'm Sam, and I'm a giant Pixar fan.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the earliest things that we bonded over, and yeah, this is a really interesting. I think the main reason why I want to have you on for this film, Finding Dory specifically, is that you loved it to the point that you actually enjoyed it more than the original. Which I'm not sure how much do you like the first one? Do you think it's a good movie, or did you revisit it a lot, or?
I don't revisit it a lot, I will say that. I have watched it since I saw Dory, of course, and I compared them and stuff. I think I would put it in my top half Pixar. It's definitely not, lower half Pixar. It's still one of my, really favorite movies, but,
Right.
I prefer Dory more. I will say this, though, just for context. I have generally preferred a lot of Pixar sequels, Toy Story 2 is my favorite Toy Story. I prefer Monsters University to Monsters, Inc. And I also prefer Cars 3 to Cars 1. So I do have, a fondness for Pixar sequels especially, so... Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I totally see you on that. Most of those choices I would agree with as well. So yeah, no, it's just so interesting because I feel like there are definitely not a lot of people who would say that Dory exceeds the original film, and as a matter of fact, a lot of people would maybe put it in the lower half, not too low, but. Most of what I hear people say is that it's just sort of a serviceable effort at best, and I just kind of want to get some insight into how you feel about that and why you think it's deserving of more credit than it's given.
I'll say this about Nemo. I think Nemo is a much more fun movie. I think if you were to get a bunch of friends around, Nemo would be the more enjoyable one to watch. I think if you want to pick things apart or anything in that regard, I think Dory, there's just far more there. I think, Dory really builds on top of what Nemo established, and I think we've discussed this heavily, but it has the most important scene out of both of the films, which I think, honestly, I think it made the whole movie necessary just for that one moment, which was the scene where they're in the... I don't know how to describe it, in the pipe, and...
in the pipes, yeah.
Yeah, and... Marlin says oh yeah, well, you found my son and stuff, and you made all that happen. And then she says, oh, I didn't know you feel that way, unless I forgot. And then he said, no, you didn't forget. I never told you. And it's such sad, horrible thing, honestly, but it's so important. I think it's fantastic. And that, when I saw that in the cinema, I was like, oh my gosh, that is something that was so needed. It was so neat. I couldn't even believe that wasn't something that was said before or even crossed my mind. But when it happened...
Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
I think that's what, blew my mind about it, too. Because, I'll go into this in sort of the rest of the podcast as you all hear, but Finding Nemo, I did not see the need for any sort of continuation.
Mm-hmm.
But that right there really just sort of... Because... We are Marlin in that scene, kind of. We are, not to say that we didn't necessarily see, any of, the positive qualities of Dory, but it never crossed our minds either that she was never, properly given credit or thanked or anything. And, yeah, it just, it hits you like a gut punch. You're like, oh my god. It's really quite tremendous. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Jeez. It's so, yeah, it's so profoundly affecting. Because I think... It's not just about justice for the character of Dory, because you can argue, and Peter and I do, and will later in the video, about whether or not that was ever necessary, but I think it's also just about recontextualizing a character that we were all familiar with, a character we previously laughed at and had fun, and just seeing her in this new light and being able to understand her struggle, her disability, and being able to empathize with her on a deeper level. I think, yeah, that just really, speaks to anyone in life that, you'll come across and you won't necessarily at first understand their plight or even know that they have one that they're going through, and then getting to know them better. Which is why I think it's so brilliant that they're taking a character that was previously a side character, which has sort of become a Pixar sequel staple outside of the Toy Stories and Cars 3. I don't know if you had any thoughts on, do you think that's a good approach to sort of explore side characters, or Should they stick with like keeping the same main character? What do you think about that?
No, I think it was perfect. I think it was. I mean, actually, on the topic of contextualizing, just so I don't forget, because you were they recontextualize stuff. I think something that the movie also did really well was the relationship between Marlin and Nemo, because like. You know, obviously, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, Nemo is too whiny in the movie, or like, oh, you know, but like, I think like the whole thing is really smart because obviously Marlin's worrying about Dory because of this problem she has, because she's forgetful, because she's, you know, she's brash, she just does things, and like, obviously Nemo is afraid that, you know, Marlin is potentially like worried about him because of his like inabilities and stuff. I think it's so. Like, I think that was really, really smart when, like, you see Nemo get so frustrated. Because there were a lot of people that were like, that was so annoying. Like, and I was like, no, that was one of my favorite parts of it. Like, I would have hated if Nemo was just, like, you know, randomly sitting around, like, smiling all the time and just being friendly.
Exactly.
Like, I don't understand this, because the movie gets this rep of, oh, you know, all like, nothing needed to happen here, it's all the same stuff, but then everything it changed, everyone criticizes. It's such a strange thing to me. It is such a bizarre film, because, like, it's so underrated. It's so underrated. I can't stress enough how, it makes me angry, because it's so good. It's so good.
No, it's a fantastic movie.
Sorry,
I agree.
I went off on a rant.
No. This is important. I think that this movie deserves a lot more passion than it receives, and specifically in the case of like when you look at Marlin and Nemo, and like Nemo, he so easily could have just been like, okay, carry over from the first one. He's just there. He's just like a bright, friendly kid. But you know, even in the first one, he had like something of an edge to him, and I think it would, it would rob the character of his significance if he was just sort of like gamely around for everything, because he is very supportive of Dory, of course. But it's really nice to see that we established this thread connecting Dory and Nemo in the first one, or at least connecting how Marlin sees them. And it's really cool to sort of just get Nemo's perspective on that, because then he like we see that he's aware of it too. And I think that's threaded through in a very smart way. But yeah, sort of bringing it back to this whole idea of the side character taking center stage. Well, I guess sort of what I would say is that it's a case-by-case basis, because of course with the Toy Story films, it's worked so well to just keep it being about Woody, and that's going to like seemingly be the direction with Toy Story 4 as well. But yeah, I do wonder if like if you had Marlin as the main character of another film set in the Finding Nemo universe, like what else you would necessarily even do. But, I mean, then again, you could say the same thing about Woody, and they found something. So, yeah, I don't really know. Would you agree it's a case-by-case basis? Do you think one is better than the other? Or is it just like this was the best they could have done in this scenario? Or
it is case-by-case. I mean, look at Cars, right?
Right,
like,
yeah.
I mean, when Mater, obviously, took the stage, like, that became a train wreck. So, and but with the Woody thing, I wouldn't change that for anything. But I will say, just on the topic of Toy Story, it is interesting that you also viewed it as, because there are a lot of people out there that think that Buzz becomes more important in the second one. So, I agree.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think he takes center stage, but I think that's his biggest role in any of the three films, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is really interesting. And you know what? That actually just reminded me as well, even though they're not the features, all of the Toy Story like shorts and specials of recent years have not focused on Woody. They had Small Fry, which was about Buzz, but yeah, they've all been supporting characters to the point that the newest one, still, Time Forgot, is just Jesus Christ.
Is the world ending outside your room?
Maybe. Toy Story that Time Forgot. My life that Time Forgot. But yeah, what I was gonna say was that it goes so far as that in Toy Story that Time Forgot, you have Trixie, one of the characters that was only introduced in the third Toy Story film, taking center stage. So there really is clearly a willingness at Pixar just be like, oh yeah, no, this character wasn't the main before, but yeah, we're gonna give them their time in the spotlight. And I think that's great. Because I do think that, it really worked in the case of Dory, and like sort of what we'll say about why something like Finding Dory works better than Cars 2, is that there was just more there for the character. Like, Dory was more of a lead, even though she was ultimately supporting the main character. She was more of a lead than Mater, who was really just, like, doesn't even... I don't think he even deserves second or third billing in the first Cars movie.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's just not enough to him.
I mean, on the topic of Dory, though, like, I mean, I'm not in the majority here, but Dory was probably my least favorite of the three in the first film. Like,
really?
I mean, I liked her just fine, but I was always like, you know, like, I mean, she's fine. That was how I just viewed her. But after Dory, I think she's my favorite of the three. Or at least in Dory, she's my favorite of the three. I think they did a good job with it. Like, obviously that's the point. So,
right.
You know, they put her in... So they did a great job. So, I mean, I truly believe if they were like, hey, we're gonna do a Finding Marlin, I would... At first, I'd be like, what? But, you know what? I bet they could pull it off. Because they've... At least in my opinion, again, they did it here. I think Dory is a much better film. And, like, Dory is, like, my fifth favorite film of all time. So,
yeah.
I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it definitely... It's a very introspective film, and I think it is more... Like it's really kind of what you were saying, that if you want a fun movie with friends, like, Finding Nemo definitely it excels in that regard. Like, obviously, it's much more than just a fun movie, but yeah, like, in terms of just the experience, it's more suited to that, whereas in the case of Finding Dory, it is... Yeah, like I could see it not necessarily pleasing everybody, but at the same time, it is so interesting, kind of the effect that it has over a period of time. Because when it first came out, I didn't see that much in the way of negative reaction, and then of course now you have all the, you know, like the wisecrack video that came out with the what went wrong with Finding Dory.
Yeah, there's a lot of distaste for it, and it's really curious. And also, I feel like a lot of the criticisms towards it aren't what I would criticize it for, because if I had to, I think we are on the same page here as well. If I had to list a portion of the movie that I think was its weakest, it's the car chase scene, which... Oh,
I actually don't agree with you.
You don't? Okay.
That's interesting. No.
All right.
But why do you think that's the weakest?
I don't think
a lot of people do, I think.
I mean, when I say weakest, I mean, I'm not meaning like, oh, that was terrible, but just in comparison to the rest of the film, I'm like, yeah, that's the lesser portion of it. I just think like it's just a bit too ridiculous, and it's...
Yes.
I think like it goes a bit too far, but I still really enjoyed it. It's really funny, so it's good in that regard. But at the time, I was like, you know, come on, like...
Right, yeah. No, I definitely understand that, and like I'll talk about this more in like the rest of the podcast, because I think Peter felt similarly about that. Although actually, like, since he wasn't like too incredibly invested at that point, he was just kind of like, well, this is funny, this is different. So I think he kind of got into it more than most. But yeah, as for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, like the sequence was starting, and I was like, all right, I don't know if this is maybe going a bit too far. But what ended up for me making sense about it was that, you know, if this is then a film that is supposed to sort of show Dory's thought process and her strategies at work and sort of her unconventional way of looking at the world, it only makes sense for the film to end with her most ridiculous kind of out there plan that she could possibly conceive of.
Oh yeah, it's definitely action. It's not like a Cars 2 what the hell is that situation. It's I just thought it was just a bit of a jump, but it wasn't a leap off a cliff. Like, it was still like reasonable and it made sense. So it was still like
it's justified in the context of the narrative, I think.
Yeah,
for me,
exactly.
The sort of the weaker aspect of the film is probably most like the stuff in sort of the end of Act 1 when we're sort of getting ourselves back across the ocean once again, and we're sort of leaning into we're aping from Finding Nemo far more than the rest of the movie does. I think that's probably the weaker section of the film, and that just proves why it was such a good idea to, number one, not do it as much in the ocean this time, to have it set in an aquarium. Number two, not use much in the way of other characters and like supporting characters from the first one, which is a huge risk to not have like the Sarks or the Tank Gang has their little cameo at the end, but like all those characters just kind of like, you know, not utilized again. I think definitely really bold choices, but for me at least, it's when the movie is leaning into the first film a bit too much, and understandably so. that, but with both its inclusion of Crush and kind of like the whole like the squid, which is just a very brief scene, sort of meant to evoke some of the dangers in the first one. It just sort of feeling like, okay, this is like not even a retread of the first one as much as it is just using something from the original very, very briefly to get a point across or to just move the story forward. That, yeah, I think that would probably be what I would say to be the weakest.
Yeah, I actually agree. Like, I mean, I still think the car thing is the weakest in my opinion, but, like, I agree with that. Like, that was also lesser. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, it is so interesting that it does seem to be, because like in a microcosm I can understand the whole idea of like, oh, it's just rehashing the first one, blah blah blah, but the rest of the movie really doesn't. It's actually it's really kind of admirable in the way that it doesn't, because this is so easy to, like, you would think of all films that if you were to do a sequel that it would then be rehashed, it would be with the just the structure of the first one and how it, like, you could just emulate that in any way. You could have Nemo get lost again, just another character get lost, some sort of need for a road trip, but no, they don't do any of that. And
well,
yeah, that's worthy of praise.
I think, like, I mean, I'm this is like obviously not a very friendly popular opinion, but like I think there is a lot of people out there who hope for Pixar to fail in some degree. Like, I do, like, I mean, I think, and that if you dislike Finding Dory, I'm not saying you agree with this, like, in the audience. I'm saying, like,
of course.
If you dislike Finding Dory, power to you, that's fine.
If you dislike any of the movies they've put out, this doesn't mean that you feel this way. But yeah.
I'm just, like, I think that there is a certain level of hate to where people are going, oh, the post-Toy Story 3 Pixar just isn't the same. And then every movie has, like, done something wrong except Inside Out, which is the really good one. Like, people are really extremely unfair on Monsters University, I think. And, like, and if there isn't anything to complain about, they'll complain it's a prequel. Or if, like, I mean, I was gonna say, like, I mean, yeah, I mean, the Good Dinosaur gets a lot of hate, but I think it deserves it, honestly. But that's just me.
Yes.
But,
no,
like,
we talked about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think, like, with Cars 3 as well, like, people went, Cars 2 sucked. Wow, Cars 3, another mediocre film. Whereas I was like, yeah, Cars 3 is pretty great. At least, I mean, in my opinion. So, I mean, I think people...
Second worst received Pixar film on Rotten Tomatoes, Cars 3.
Yeah, like, that's...
It's above Cars 2. Like, that's really... No.
Yeah, that's absurd. Like, it is... Yeah. It's so strange that, like... Pixar's reception is just so weird recently. Because
I think it really is just sorry. I think it really is just that it's that whole idea of something's very popular and it's so fun to just be like, oh well, actually it's terrible and now it's, you know,
but
it feels great. But yeah, you were saying.
But Incredibles 2 isn't getting that, which I think is really strange.
No, it's so true.
Because I think I mean, it must just be like a certain age group, I guess. Like I can't really understand why, like, you know, Monsters and Finding had, like, you know, this hate towards them, but Incredibles 2, from announcement to teaser to anything else, has been received with overwhelming positive reception. Like, no matter what. And they haven't... Yeah. I mean, Finding Dory, people were hating on it when it got announced. And, like, I don't get it. And even Toy Story 4, you see people going, oh, you know... glad Incredibles 2 got pushed forward, and it's like, well, why? Like, I mean, is there any indication that Toy Story 4 is going to be terrible at all? It's just, I think, like, people just want to hate on it for the sake of hating on it. And, like, again, it's a minority. It's not, I'm not saying this is why everyone dislikes new Pixar. I'm just saying, I think there is a group of people that are hoping that Pixar fail. And I think that's a large reason why there are a lot of Finding Dory rant videos and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, you know, the reason that everyone's okay with The Incredibles 2 is that the first one ended on a cliffhanger, right, Sam? It ended on a total cliffhanger. We already discussed, we discussed in the Incredibles video how, like, it's just... It's not a cliffhanger at all. It's just meant to illustrate the families, like, working together, being a team, you know. But yeah, like I think that is a very well taken point, that everyone seems not only okay with The Incredibles 2, but they're downright embracing it. They're like, oh my god, waited my whole life
Yeah,
come out.
Yeah, I mean, you see people going like, if I see any under 18-year-olds in my theater, then I'm gonna get angry. It's like, well, why? But then what's wrong with Finding Dory, guys? It's so strange. But I mean, I'm glad that there's passion for Incredibles 2. Like, that's great. I'm just confused as to why it's seemingly isolated into Incredibles 2. But
yeah, I'll be really curious to see what people are saying after the movie actually comes out. Because with Finding Dory and as you said with Monsters University too, I think both of those sequels compared to their original films, you could say both end up being a little bit more ponderous, a little deeper, a little like really kind of like interesting and out there and unique in their messages. And while I think both Finding Nemo and Monsters Inc. are more tightly constructed than like the films that followed them, there's really a lot to appreciate about Monsters University and Finding Dory that I feel like it is directly targeting the audiences that sort of grew up on them, and now it's just like, okay, here's then sort of deeper messages for you to sink your teeth into. So it is very surprising that doesn't seem to really be happening, and I wonder if The Incredibles 2 will follow this trend, because of course that is another one in which it'll be a side character of sorts, which Elastigirl, even though not lacking at all in screen time in the first one, the fact that then still be the main character, it's already ticked that box. So I do wonder if it's going to be another scenario in which everyone just discounts it. Hopefully not. I hope it's extremely well received, but you never know.
It'll be interesting to see, because Incredibles 2 was in development-wise, was like the latest sequel planned before they axed the sequels. So maybe after Toy Story 4, which focused on like, I mean, we don't know what Toy Story 4 is going to really be, honestly, but like, maybe they looked at the reception of Uni and Dory and went, let's go in a different direction. So maybe we'll, I don't know. But
then again, would they really? Because those are some of their top grossers. I mean, Finding Dory made over $1 billion, and Monster University, while it didn't quite make that much, still made a ton of money. It's one of their higher grossers. So I really don't know.
Hey, I really hope it's similar to Uni and Dory, because I love them. So to me, that would be ideal. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that's quite funny. Yeah, I guess we'll just see. So, do you have any other thoughts on Dory?
I mean, if in the audience, if you've only seen it like once and made your opinion, give another try. That's just my 2 cents. I feel like a lot of people I know, kind of discounted it and moved on, and I think that's a shame. I think it is a truly good movie, and it's worth a shot. So yeah, I'd go give another try. And
definitely well said. So thanks for coming on. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the discussion, in which I'll be talking with Peter, who definitely doesn't share our affinity for Finding Dory. So thank you for having something of a positive and like-minded opinion, so that I can continue keeping myself in my bubble that Finding Dory is great and everyone else thinks.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Take care, Sam.
Hey everyone, I'm Peter Mancuso.
And I'm Brian Koch.
And today this is the countdown to Coco. What's the countdown to Coco? Well, if you're jumping in at this video, well, that's a mistake, because this is the 17th episode of the countdown to Coco.
For Brian, the 17th Pixar film!
Brian, I always explain what the countdown to
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Would you? No, I'm asking, would you like to explain what the countdown to Coco? Well, we're almost done with them, so I thought, or maybe I'd give you a chance to see if you... Dory!
You'll throw me a bone?
I'm going to let you try. And you'll probably inevitably fail.
Oh.
And by some random circumstance, it'll still work out somehow.
Let's see. Countdown to Coco. I see a lamp. Oh, like the lamp in the logo for Pixar. Oh, that's right. The Pixar.
Yeah, complete accidental. That's right.
No, not accidental. Using what's in front of me to my advantage, because that's what Dory does. It's not out of nowhere, and we're already getting started in our differing opinions. But the countdown to Coco. It basically, we review every Pixar film, and we talk about them all the theatrically released ones, as Peter says, even though there aren't any that are direct-to-video. Yes, we know about Planes. That's not Pixar. That's Disney Toon Studios. It takes place above the world of Cars, but not in the studios of Pixar. So So we're doing them all, and now we're up to their 17th film,
The Finding Dory. Excuse me, I forgot what we were doing. Since we switched roles, I forgot like the whole script, the whole thing.
I guess you're Dory.
I guess. That's funny. Making fun of people with mental illness. That's real funny. That's real class.
It wasn't. It was just a light little poke. I wasn't. Okay. Well, we have some interesting experience regarding Finding Dory because. After it came out in the summer of 2016. June.
It's the worst summer of my life. I remember it fondly. Not because of this movie, but
yes. But we then I was at that point that after that summer we first became roommates. In college,
yes.
Remember?
We had been friends, but this is where we officially become roommates.
Well, friends.
But
like, yeah, so on the very first night, we were sort of then just talking about Finding Dory, as we do, because we're film majors, so we talk.
It came out. That was a big movie that came out over the summer.
It was a big movie that came out, and I was talking about how much I enjoyed it, and Peter was sort of like going on about how he didn't really enjoy it as much, and we had this long discussion, probably our first big discussion alone. In the sanctity of a home.
In our bed. Oftentimes, basically, this Countdown to Coco was modeled after us talking in our bed, like when we're in our separate beds, of course. Well, sometimes we're in the same bed, but I should have said that.
We said you wouldn't mention.
I know. I'm sorry. I did promise that. But we would sit there and we talk about movies all the time, and so the idea for this series was like we may as well sit down and record ourselves because we have interesting conversations.
We'd be very passionate, and we'd go on for like an hour, and then we'd be like, we should have recorded that. So then we learned. But what was so funny with Finding Dory?
This is the origin. Yeah.
Yes. So we had the big debate, and then until we just couldn't talk anymore, and we fell asleep, and Peter fell asleep before me, and. Sometimes Peter talks in his sleep.
Yeah, sometimes I'm a famous. My family
much like Dory.
Much like Dory, yeah. I come from a long history of sleep talker, walkers, screamers. I haven't screamed
swimmers,
yet.
Sleep swimmers,
sleep swimmers. Sure, if I was a fish, sure, yeah. So the first night I was there, I don't think I woke up. I think I was just confused.
Okay.
Right. I woke up. It was 4 a.m. Now, mind you, we had gone to sleep at 3 a.m. It wasn't that much later.
Yeah.
I've been up all night because we were,
And I
turned around, it had been dead silent. We hadn't said anything in forever. Mm-hmm. And I just turn around, and turn my neck and just say to Brian in this sleepy voice, I appreciate how much you love Finding Dory. But then, I realized, that I just, said something, that wasn't, I wasn't in a dream, this was real. So I, tried to pretend I, went back to sleep. So I did that, and I could hear Brian, and I was about to go, what? This is our first night together.
I was touched. I was like, oh, even though we don't agree, he still appreciates my passion for it.
I don't know why I said that. I don't think that.
And that's when I knew it was the start to a beautiful friendship.
Okay. No, I agree.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
So this Finding Dory is very important to Brian and I's friendship. And that's why we're going to fight over it.
Yeah.
Because we have basically polar opposite opinions.
It may seem like we're fighting about Finding Dory, but we're really fighting about our friendship.
Basically, sure. But
okay. So
because actually going back to our personal experiences with it.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about before you went, cuz I remember I wasn't really going to see it. But then you because we were texting over the summer. Every so often we'd be like, oh, you see this, and we would talk about stuff. And you remember you texted me, and were like, oh my god, just saw Finding Dory, totally, if you were worried about feeling like a unnecessary sequel,
or a rehash,
feel like your anxieties can be tranquilized, it is so good and feels so necessary. It's the character, it's so cool. I remember being oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then I realized I can't always trust your opinions, because then I go see it, and I personally, at least for me,
yes,
I personally did not have a super strong positive experience with the film.
I see.
I wouldn't say it was a strong negative either. The way I would describe it is, our Inside Out review was 2.5 hours long. I have strong opinions about the issues with that film. I don't necessarily really have strong opinion. I think my opinions have become stronger more in reaction to your strong positive opinions.
I see.
So it's trying to combat.
I will force you to have strong opinions, because if you don't, then you'll just get so frustrated at mine, then they'll grow stronger and stronger.
like the dark side.
Yeah, like the dark side. Yeah.
But anyway, so I saw it. I went with my mom and sister, and they also didn't really care for it, I will say.
Really?
Yeah, we all went. It was like the weekend it came out.
I never really liked them, but. Oh.
Oh my god. I mean, fair enough.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, if they're listening to this, our Finding Dory review, they're gonna be mighty upset that you said that, Brian. But yeah, so I kind of want to get your perspective, Brian, on maybe some initial reactions you have. Maybe some concerns you had before going into.
Well, I think that's a good way to put it, because I never thought they would do a sequel to Finding Nemo. That seemed like the quintessential one that you don't do. Because it's a self-contained story. You found Nemo. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna find? Shush. Okay.
I'm just agreeing.
Just shush. But you found Nemo. What are you gonna? Is he gonna get lost again? Finding Nemo again? Which is kind of what they do in the Seas with Nemo and Friends. If you go to Disney.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's literally they take you through every single beat of the movie, and Marlin's like, oh, not again. And they have the anglerfish, they have the sharks. They literally do everything again, and you're like. Why wasn't this just the movie?
I think we did touch on this in our Finding Nemo one, but it bears repeating because it's on my top 5 least favorite Disney rides.
It's tough
to be a bug. It's not that bad.
Well, it doesn't stab you.
It doesn't stab me. No, it doesn't stab you in the back and shoot like stink spray. In your face.
It more just tickles you, but not in a good way, like a stop it kind of way. So, yeah, but I was really worried. I was like, oh, so then is Dory just going to get lost? Because I remember after first seeing Finding Nemo in 2003, and we went to McDonald's and they had like a little tie-in deal with the toys, and I had like a Dory toy. I remember like playing with it, and I was talking with my parents about like, oh, what if they did another Finding Nemo? And they were like, well, they could definitely do a Finding Dory because, she definitely get lost, So it was like...
So you say your parents...
My parents created Finding Dory. No. But the reason I bring that up is it's a very specific reason. Because that speaks to this whole idea of like, oh yeah, Dory, she's just sort of like... She doesn't know what she's doing. She's going to get lost. She can't take care of herself. Haha. Kind of speaks to where we leave off with her in terms of our impression of her at the end of the first film. Which is like, yes, no, she definitely, she shows her worthiness, even though Marlin never directly thanks her. He like, tosses off, like, a cursory one as he's leaving her behind, like, for what he intends to be forever, but never properly gives her credit for everything that she's done for him. But the very last thing she does is go, bye, Elmo, Nemo. So it's like, she can't even remember the person that she was looking for, the whole movie's name. LOL. So... that kind of leaves the audience being like, yeah, she definitely can't take care of herself. Oh, she's so wacky. Oh, blah, blah, blah. So that's sort of the defining imprint left of that character. And why I think it's definitely necessary. And it sort of ties into what Andrew Stanton said upon revisiting the film in its 3D re-release, Finding Nemo. He started thinking about, Dory doesn't seem like she's going to be okay. Like, there needs to then be more closure on that. And... I think it's what's so sort of compelling about how Finding Dory was put together is that even though Finding Nemo didn't leave me thinking that there was anything left to expand on, once I saw Finding Dory, there's a very specific moment where I realized, oh, this definitely needed to exist, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. But it proved its worthiness while I was watching it, and. Yeah, I was just very surprised. And I think as soon as I saw in, like, sort of the description when they were talking about, it's not that she gets lost, it's more of a journey of self-discovery and learning about her past and sort of finding herself, that it was, like this sort of, like, internal journey. I was like, oh, okay. That sounds good. That's not just a rehash. That's just, sort of using the Finding title in, like a different way. But, like, it's not going to just repeat the same thing. So... then I was like, all right, so maybe there is something here, or at the very least, I'm very happy for Ellen, because Ellen DeGeneres on her show for years and years would always be talking about how they really should make a Finding Nemo too, and so like have Tom Hanks or Tim Allen on to like talk about Toy Story 3, and she'd be like, well, lucky you, but you have 3 movies, and I still only have the one. She'd talk about it years and years and years, and when she finally was able to announce it on her show, she like started like a countdown, like talk about the countdown to Coco. It was countdown to Finding Dory coming out. It was like years away, and she like was like, "Here it is!" like in like a banner. It was very fun.
It was like 636
days, like that. And then I think it even got delayed after that. So I was like, "Oh boy, poor Ellen." So, but like finally, then it came out, and yeah, I was very pleased because I had my concerns, and I think anyone is justified in having concerns, but I think that it proved itself. And I think that you don't think that.
That's a wonderful little piece of fiction you've strewn together there.
Oh.
However, no, I think I don't know where to start. So I think the first thing is kind of just mirror what you're talking about and try to follow the same through line, but from my perspective.
Sure.
So with this film, you talk about how at the end of Finding Nemo.
Yes.
And I think a lot of talking about this film is talking about Finding Nemo and how what it does for Dory and if it's enough. You know, so you brought up this thing about, you know, at the end of Finding Nemo, you know, she proves herself and like Marlin gives her a cursory thank you. And at the end she like messes up the name and it's like, oh, like she's still, and there's this sense of like she's not gonna be okay or something. Like she can't remember. I never got that impression that she wasn't gonna be okay. Yeah. And I really don't think other people do. Watching Finding Nemo. Yeah. Maybe now it's hard to find this out now.
I don't think it's as much of a concern as it is laughing at her, which is something I
don't necessarily think. I think that's more just a reference, just a repetition and difference of the fact that, you know, in a surface level way, it's a repetition and difference thing because the whole film it's just a cute little button. Because the whole film she's been messing up, but she knows who he is. Like a rose by any other name,
sure.
You know, sure. But in a deeper level, if you really want me to try to justify, I think that's enough. What I just said, but if you really want me to try to justify, is showing like no, like she's not, she still has these issues, but like now she's found home, now she's found closure.
Okay, I can see that, and I think
that's okay.
I think it's definitely like funny. I'm not trying to like knock it, but I will say it is a laugh at the character's expense. I don't think it's really laughing with her.
Sure, but I don't think it's like a...
And I think Finding Dory does work to recontextualize this in the sense that I like when I'm watching the scene in which she's Mr. Ray's teaching assistant and basically like kind of just piggybacking off everything he says. Like every teaching assistant. Just kidding, not really. No, it's not
usually the TAs are usually the ones doing all the teaching. And then
actually, no, that's true. That's true.
At least in college. Right. I don't know about like in like for little kids. But.
So she sort of then she stumbles and forgets again, and then turns around, does the same. It's the same thing from the first movie with the "Can I help you?" And then the kids all laugh, and that's really sort of the only time in which, and like as an audience, we're not really then laughing at that moment, but that shows this whole then idea of other people are laughing at her inability to remember, as if it's like oh haha, and the movie then sort of just. It changes that. It changes our position on it because it puts us from her perspective, and from her perspective, it's really a troubling way to live because they sort of tap into sort of all of the, just like the social awkwardness is like the utter stress of then like she's like constantly apologizing to everyone she meets, and they'll leave her, and then she'll still try to then be positive about it because she knows that she has like a way of sending people off, and she's very much aware of that, but there's not really anything she could do other than to try to like kill him with kindness. Yeah. Which is really then it kind of gets at the inherent like tragedy and sadness of the character. And they sort of even like touch on like sort of the pitfalls of social interaction and like the falsities of it when you have like Hank say that whole thing about like everyone just is telling each other they're fine. Newsflash. No, nobody's fine, and then you have the one guy on the phone like, well, I'm fine. How are you? Yeah. You say so. It's always it's putting on these facades in order to interact with someone. These facades of kindness to hope that they'll speak to you.
But no, those are interesting points. Yeah. Your excitement for the film is clear because you completely derailed what I was. My point. I'm trying to go back to what we were originally talking about.
Oh yeah. Oh, what were you talking about?
I forgot.
I'm Dory. Ha ha.
Okay. So going back to this idea of Finding Nemo.
Oh yes. Right.
I really want to take it back to the root level and then work upward. Okay. You bring up as like a defense for this argument. Oh, like we're laughing at her. Mm-hmm. You know, and like and then you brought up the example when she's with the kids. Yeah. And how they're laughing at her. Yeah. Well, that's in Finding Dory, but not in Finding Nemo. But my point being is that we don't have this moment. There's that except for that one moment. You know, at the end. You know, like there's no characters in Finding Nemo who are like that. That thread is introduced in Finding Dory, but I'm looking at purely Finding Nemo and this issue of when we, as an audience member, when I watch it, right? And I already know what you think, so hear me out for a second. When I watch it, before or after seeing this film, I really don't think, and I think the majority of people do not watch it and think either, A, Dory's so stupid. I think it's just like an endearing, like, that's just Dory. You know, the way, like, you have, like, a grandparent with Alzheimer's, who might forget your name, but they still, like, know who you are and they love you. You know, it's just like, that's just Dory. A. Right. You know, it doesn't demean her. Yeah. And B, even if she is that way, you know, no one's laughing at her. Yeah. No one's ever. It's still like, did she say bye Elmo, and then he corrects her, right? Nemo. So he's trying to support her and help her along, which actually gives me more indication that she's going to be more okay. Because now she has a support system, which she never had before.
So what I would say in response to that is all these instances in which, like, you say, like, oh, no one would say Dory is stupid. I don't think anyone would say Dory is stupid, but most of what she does in that, in terms of, like, being helpful, other than, like, of course, her instinct to help Marlin in general, but just sort of, like, bouncing on the tops of the jellyfish, or even the whole thing with the whale, it could seem inadvertent and almost like flukes to an audience member, of just like, oh, I guess then she just sort of figured it out, but, like, not really, just kind of like by accident, as it were. And what I would say in terms of the fact that no character is laughing at her, I'm not saying that characters were laughing at her throughout. I'm saying that the kids in Finding Dory are representative of how the audience would respond to her. Because I think throughout Finding Nemo, there are many points at which we laugh at the expense of her condition.
And that's fair. Because, but I think this film tries to make her, you use that word condition, right? Like, it's like this mental illness. This one makes it much more like a mental illness.
It does.
In Finding Nemo, it's not like a mental illness that is being laughed at. It's more of just like a character has short-term memory loss. Like, it's not
playing off this idea of, like, how fish can't remember.
Yeah, it's not
no,
like,
I know.
And, you know, and so I think that going off of that example, whereas this film, you know, if you portray, if you accept this notion that it's like the characters or the audience, kind of don't treat Dory seriously, because she has this mental illness that people are just, like, not taking seriously, then yes, this is like a super insightful recontextualization. Yes. But I don't think the original film presents a scenario where she has some kind of mental illness. That's just the character not being able to remember things.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it doesn't present a scenario in which that's...
But do you see my point, though?
Oh, of course I see your point. But I think it was smart to recontextualize it that way.
But then I think it kind of, like, in a way, like, retcons the severity of the situation, to the point where it self-justifies itself. Whereas it needs that to exist. Like, that, it needs to have that element in order for this film to feel more justified.
But it doesn't feel too out of place, because Dory did have an emotional weight to her in the first film, and we saw her struggling with her memory and her issues with then not having a home, and this whole idea of, you know, she struggles to, like, just retain even like the smallest of facts. And yeah, like, it comes from somewhere, and I think we should talk a little bit about this whole notion of Pixar doing sequels in which a side character takes the focus, because that is definitely, like, sort of a trend that they've done. The Toy Story movies don't, like, that's Woody, and Toy Story 4, like, is seemingly going to then still have Woody in the forefront, but Cars 2, of course,
if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so with Cars 2, let's forget Cars 2. But it does focus on Mater.
Right. But the whole thing that we talked about, and we brought up Finding Dory briefly in our discussion of that, was that Mater didn't really have all that much to begin with, and in Cars 2, they don't really have that much to work off of, and even then they can't really like add all that much. I guess he's sort of an expert on car parts, and he likes his dents, and he really likes his best friend Lightning McQueen. Yeah. So, okay.
In Monsters University,
with Mike.
We have Mike, and
that's successful.
I think that works successfully, because it's not so much really about. It's because it's a prequel, so you're kind of like seeing the character we know.
And they were originally, it was supposed to be Sully that was going to be the main thrust of the film. And you know what? This is really, they realized how dumb this was, but what they wanted to do at first was have him, like, not even have an inkling of wanting to be a scare. He'd, like, want to be, like, a dentist or something stupid. Mike? No, Sully.
Oh, Sully.
And then
he realizes.
Yeah, and they realized, like, the audience would just be like, obviously this is the wrong choice. You're so ferocious. just like no one wants to see him be a dentist, like the thumb. And they tried to like force all this stuff, like, oh, he has then like father issues, and like they said it just all felt forced. Then we realized, wait a minute, Mike has the more interesting story.
And I think why that film works in terms of this idea of like
switching the focus
to a side character, I feel is a little bit more successful than this film.
Yes,
is in that film. I think in our Monsters University analysis we talked about how you can watch Monsters Inc. now knowing like I guess like the canon, like what happened before, but it really doesn't like influence it in any way. Like I don't think it really, and I think that's a problem. I think a lot of people have, whereas like the prequel of Monsters University, the what we learn about the characters in Monsters University doesn't like really cast a new light over the original film.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for some people, but I think in this case, that's to its advantage, in the sense that it's not, because if you cast a light over the original, you run the risk of compromising what's already there. And that's what I feel in a lot of ways this film does.
Really?
In the sense that I think it in terms of this character, Dory, I have it's not something specific, it's something I've noticed in films.
Yeah.
When you try to, like, I wouldn't say Mike is a side character the way, no, I'm gonna take it, never mind, I'm not gonna say what I was gonna say, but my main point is, I noticed something similar with the film that came out this year, the Lego Batman movie.
Ah, yes.
And in the Lego movie, Batman is like more or less a side character. He's a comic
definitely
relief
a side character.
Right?
I would argue much more so than Dory.
Sure, yes. And then they gave and his whole shtick, like he's not like, I'm not meant to like connect to him. Like he may have an arc, but like
his arc is mostly just echoes of Batman lore that you understand,
right?
And just this whole stick of like the loner and
and the performance is such, right? Like as a voice actor, as a voice actor, I'm going to approach the Lego Batman character differently if he's the side character or the main character.
Of course,
right? Theoretically.
Yeah, sure.
What my problem with the Lego Batman film is that you basically took this character that really didn't have a lot of dimensionality in terms of the writing or the performance, to be quite frank.
Yeah. And
placed him where he's the focus. He's like our main character, and we're supposed to be following him and seeing his arc, and he's supposed to be our vessel through the story. And they still kind of play him like a comic relief character, but now he's the one having an arc. And for me, it doesn't really work. In a similar way in this film, and this isn't a bad thing, because we love comic characters.
Sure.
Right? But, Dory is kind of like a comic relief character in Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
She's a main character. She's not really a side character, but she's like a secondary character, is what I would say. Because you have like the protagonist, anyone who's not a protagonist, and everyone else is like at most secondary.
Right.
So she served a purpose. Basically, and this is
as any supporting character should do.
And this, there's the reason why it's called supporting, because they support something. And what is that? The main character, which is Marlin, and kind of Nemo, but Marlin is the protagonist.
Marlin.
And that's not to degrade or claim that a certain character is shallow or the writing is superficial. Characters have certain functions.
Yeah.
And and for me, I think in the case of Lego Batman, and then I think in elements of this, not so much with this. Because Lego Batman,
Lego Batman, you feel is an extreme example.
Is an extreme example. Because he's like really like just an ancillary character. Whereas Dory actually is important to the themes
of course.
I don't mean to degrade her importance to the story, but in this, we're stretching her like a bit too thin, I feel. Like we're trying to like give her situation and her arc more importance.
More heft.
And I think it comes down to the fact that it is a sequel. Because you have this context of the original film. If this just existed as its own thing, or someone just wrote a story about a fish who can't remember, but I think I would be much more inclined to buy into it. But but when you compare it to the first film, and not in terms of the quality of the first film, but the stakes of the first film, the kind of the journey, seeing this character exist and how they behave in relationship to other characters, the importance of their situation to other characters.
Yes.
And then to see that become the forefront feels dissonant in some way. And it's hard to put my finger on it, but it feels dissonant in the sense of, this is a side, this character exists to support another character, but now
it feels ancillary, like just the character does, so then the film around them that's a follow-up to the other film does.
Yeah, because it kind of feels
in your opinion, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it feels, and the way I described it was, because I like what the movie's trying to do.
Yeah.
On paper, the movie's working, right? Mm-hmm. But we'll get into more specifics. I'm sure we'll bring something up, and then we'll talk about how we disagree on it. But I think a major thing I'll say, and then I'll let you talk. This is the last thing I'll say before I kind of give the floor back. It kind of feels like the whole film kind of feels like a really passionately written fan fiction. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, because I think fanfiction has this like stigma, it's like really shitty. Like some fanfiction should be really good.
Oh, definitely.
Right, but at the end of the day, there's still
we've all read it. Come on, guys. We've read it. We enjoy some, and even the stuff that's like not good. Sometimes we'll read it and enjoy it.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, and not just because it's in a written form. Like even if that person somehow had the tools to like literally like the keys to Pixar and do it, at the end of the day, it's still like a fan fiction, almost like headcanon, so to speak. It feels kind of like someone passionately watching, loves Finding Nemo, and then probably has some kind. Let me describe a scenario for you. You have someone who like loves Finding Nemo, but really identifies with Dory. Maybe they have some kind of maybe not necessarily mental illness, but some kind of thing where they maybe like really relate to like that situation, right? I'm not feeling like they can like do things right to other people's satisfactions, and then they are like, I want Dory justice. Like I really care. I don't feel like this movie does justice. Most people don't really think about that, but this person feels very passionate. Like Dory needs more justice than this film.
I see.
And they write this film.
That's well put. Yeah.
And they write this story
that she
to support
justice.
that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big criticism of mine is that it feels like it exists more to purport an idea than to tell a story. Because to be completely frank, I'm really not into. And I don't know. I think you can maybe meet me here. There's not a lot of story here. It's a lot of more just like objective and then kind of like characters. It's a little episodic, but like not in the way that Finding Nemo is.
Yeah.
Like when I talk, this movie feels very like very episodic. Things aren't really building off of each other necessarily, especially with Marlin and Nemo. They're just kind of like having these little like anecdotal things. That's my big point. Is it feels like a kind of a fanfic that was the impetus was someone really wanted to give Dory this justice, but really they're trying to give themselves justice. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, sure. I think that leads me this whole notion of wanting then like saying that there's not as much in the way of like story or like forward momentum of the plot leads me well into what I wanted to say. Although first I'll get into a very brief tangent that has nothing to do with anything other than just you reminded me when you talked about fan fiction. You reminded me of this fan fiction I haven't thought of in years, which is of Toy Story 2, and it's one of the best ideas for a fan fiction that I've ever seen, just because I was like, oh, like, wow, like, who would have ever thought of this? Kind of going off this idea of, like, no one would ever, like, necessarily assign it such importance, but, like, then someone who thinks about it. So I guess that's the little connection that I'll make with this. But it was just, you know how in Toy Story 2, they have the part when they apprehend Stinky Pete by taking the pictures that are in the... So then it's the family that gets the pictures that developed from the camera when they get their luggage back. And
that's fascinating.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I loved that. I hope that if someone's listening and they can find it, I always thought that was such a cool idea. But anyway, what I was going to say is, going back to sort of the comparison you drew with the Lego Batman movie, I think that is a very interesting comparison. And I think with the Lego Batman movie, I won't get too much into it, of course, but the benefit that has is it doesn't so much try to connect itself to the original Lego movie, like, at all. It's more about recontextualizing Batman, like the character
through the Lego lens.
Through the Lego lens.
It's less of a sequel to the Lego movie, more of like an addition to the Batman lore, so to speak. Yeah.
So, but like the comparison that I would make is then it's sort of then offering this meditation on the way Batman has always been and seemingly always will be. Like, we always then have these fights with the Joker. He doesn't have any meaningful relationships that'll be permanent and such. And it's like offering comments on them, and more like the Lego Batman movie sort of exists in this sense of like a very much an awareness of like the constants of Batman. It's not like it's starting at a point in which things are maybe having the potential to change, but it's very much aware of like the infinite of this is the status quo of Batman, and it's going to be about reflecting and talking with other characters and trying to see if maybe Batman could work with other people and like find some closure with the parents, which I think is similar to what they do with Finding Dory, except in the context of the original film, in that it's more about, and I think this is something that is a smart choice when you have a comic relief character that was a supporting character in a film before, that you take them, and it is all about a reinterpretation. So the film itself should constantly be offering reinterpretations, and it should be more self-reflective. And I think Finding Dory really excels at this. Something with, like, when I look at the Marlin and Nemo subplot, it's pretty much all entirely in service of this idea of working with Becky and Marlin not having faith in her, and Nemo, like, saying, like, you thought, you know, like, you made her feel like she couldn't do it, and of course, he's not just talking about Becky, he's talking about how Marlin treats Dory, and sort of the way he's seeing her disability, and how that even kind of reflects on how he could see his own son with his own disability, because Nemo has one too. Nemo has the lucky fin. So it's sort of then getting at this idea of treating someone else differently, not necessarily giving them full trust or like giving them the credit of being able to get themselves out of a precarious situation or defend themselves or make good choices. So it's offering through that lens, and like all of those scenes then just sort of like it leads into these analytical discussions about, well, if Dory was here, she'd know what to do. And then Nemo has this line of, I don't think she'd know what to do. She doesn't even know what to do. She just does. And talking about the Dory way, like how Dory views the world.
Way.
the Dory way. The Dorian way, sure. And like, and how Marlin, in his attempt to try to detail Dory's perspective, starts talking about, she'd analyze the situation and she'd lay the pups, and Nemo was like, no, Dad, that's what would Marlin do? Because we're always then projecting our own.
He knows his father's name. I didn't know my father's name until I was 15 years old.
Well, it was his dad. What a great point that you added on to what I'm saying. But anyway, so it is all about the reinterpretation. What's so interesting is that originally the Marlin and Nemo subplot was very different. It was originally, and I'll tell you what this is. So, if you want to see this, it's available in storyboard form, mostly with scratch vocals. There's a little bit that's not.
I think it's available on the black market. Like
no.
A hidden copy.
It's not on the Blu-ray, but it is on. Well, it used to be Disney Movies Anywhere. It just recently changed to Movies Anywhere. It's an exclusive feature on that, and it's a full subplot involving the Tank Gang, and it's about like 17 minutes or so. And basically what happens is after Marlin and Nemo lose her, which they don't lose her like right outside of the aquarium in this version, then they come across the Tank Gang again, and it's this whole sort of an idea of they're going to try to help them get back to Dory, and Gil has all these crazy plans, and Marlin starts kind of like poking holes in them because he's concerned about, is it safe? I don't know, we have to think about this more. And he sort of inspires a lack of confidence in the rest of the group, and as a result, like, kind of the morale is weakened. So then Gil tries to then talk about, like, then you have to, like, be a leader, and you have to, you know. And it ends up being too much about Marlin, and not enough of a reflection of, like, Dory's arc and the things that were happening in this movie. It's really fun and entertaining to watch, but it doesn't really connect in such a way. And I think that it sort of gets at this idea of taking something from the first one that's great, and then we're going to do it here, and that's something that definitely doesn't stand alone in its own film. And I think that they could have maybe tried to force a connection there of like, since then Marlin is sort of weakening the morale of the Tank Gang through like throwing out all of these like cautions, that's kind of like what he does with Dory, and that like he like, no pun intended, bursts her bubble or whatever. But I feel like that's not the relationship they have. It's not that Marlin is like nullifying Dory, but by any means, it's more of a lack of trust. So it's not quite there. They could have maybe then figured it out, but of course then it's such a coincidence that they even come across the Tank Gang in the first place. But
yeah,
it is really entertaining. And
can I ask a question?
Yeah,
we kind of talk about like maybe the word is like the urgency of the plot.
Sure.
That I think I talked about this idea of like the stakes feeling lower than the first one, and a comparison I would make is I guess people didn't like this movie. I did, but I haven't seen it forever, so maybe I wouldn't anymore.
What movie?
The new Star Trek films.
Oh,
I liked the
whole
second one.
Trilogy. Oh,
I
liked
liked the second one.
Into Darkness.
Yeah, I quite liked that one. I don't know why people didn't like it.
You liked the switch of the Spock and Kirk at the end with the Khan.
I know about the Wrath of Khan film, but I've never seen it, so
okay.
I don't have enough of an affinity. I know how they switch. I don't have enough of an affinity for it to care.
Well, you know what's interesting. This is definitely not the point you were going to make, but in that film, sort of, then the whole difference is like Spock, who's like to put it very bluntly, like I'll just say this as like a blanket statement. Spock is this Vulcan character who doesn't really feel much in the way of emotion. So in this original Star Trek film, then Spock died, and then Kirk was really angered by it, but the roles are reversed in the second of the new J.J. Abrams films. Well, J.J. Abrams didn't do the third one, but anyway, the fact that Kirk then dies, he's far too quickly revived after, but anyway. Yeah. Then Spock is infuriated by this, and he yells the famous line of Khan, which Kirk originally yelled. And sort of what angered fans so much about that was Spock would never have such emotion that then he'd start like punching people.
But this is not
but it is interesting. But what I'm saying is that it's just getting at this idea of applying emotion to a supporting character that could potentially feel disingenuous, which is not the point you were going to make. But go ahead.
Well, and I guess in reference to that point, before I make my original point about I like my subject like for a sentence point, but going off of that, I'm not saying that supporting characters can't have arcs or emotions.
I know.
But I just
something
don't,
I thought.
I don't like when we basically try to take a character that exists as a it's like having a house and then trying to live in the foundation. Do you know what I mean? Like it exists to support. And then trying to give it paramount importance, so to speak. But my point I was gonna make, is that you watch the first, even if you don't like the second one, like the stakes feel really high, you know. Yeah. And then you get to the third one, and people who liked the third one, basically it just feels like a random episode.
I see.
Of the Star Trek.
But I heard people really like that though.
People like Star Trek. People who like Star Trek.
Right. Of course.
Me coming off of the only Star Trek things I know are the two J.J. Abrams films. So
it didn't meet that.
It felt underwhelming. It just felt like a random tangential story that kind of like it was self-contained, but like didn't feel like the third part. Right? In a similar way, it feels like Finding Nemo was like the season finale of a series, like a season finale, and then Finding Dory was like the third episode of the next season. Like just some story that kind of happens. Right. It doesn't feel like it like earns like the next part of the story.
I see.
And we were talking about Marlin and Nemo and having this intricate. I guess you would have this fear of rehashing, but I would like to get into this part. I think that a lot of parts of this feel like it's rehashing Finding Nemo in a lot of ways. But we can get that later. But so I guess I understand why they didn't do this, but I think the real interesting story here is not Dory, but Marlin and Nemo's relationship. After having saved him. After having saved him, this is probably a little too sophisticated for like a Pixar film, but like really getting into that.
But go ahead.
No, but I mean, really getting into this idea of like it's your fault, Dad. In a way, like resenting his father, like coming to resent his father for something, and you see glimmers of it here, where he's like, you don't believe in Dory or Becky, and like by extension, you don't believe in me. Yeah. Right. And like that was a really interesting thread, but that scene, it's when they're in like the little tank with like the little plastic fish. Yeah. That scene, right, generated these ideas of like a really interesting kind of father-son, developing what was established in the first film, but really deepening it. And really getting down to like the dirty bits of it. Sure, yeah. But in this film, they kind of start to scratch that itch, and I go, "Oh, this would be interesting." But then it kind of becomes like the end of a Full House episode, where it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, son," and it's like, "It's okay." Like it was kind of just more like to shake him out of his like being dumb. And you can hear kind of like the fun Thomas Newman music in the back. But not the way that I'm talking about. Okay. No, I don't think you can make the argument that it's getting to what I'm talking about.
Oh, like I don't think, because that's not the focus of the film.
It's more, it's fun. Nemo just gets frustrated.
Nemo gets frustrated, but
he's like, oh, I'm sorry. There's no like actual like there's no reckoning with that.
Well, the ultimate concern of the film is Dory.
Well, that's what
I mean. What I would say is that that's just that's a reflection of how Marlin then sees her. So if Marlin changes his view on that, then Nemo will feel appeased.
That's what I'm saying. He changes his view like as soon as Nemo does that. He's like, oh, okay, I understand now. So that scene makes it feel very After School Special-y.
I don't. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily agree. I think that
no, it's not. That's not. Hear me out for a second. Okay. It's not a bad thing because the film's focus is not that. Mm-hmm. So the point of that scene is to shake Marlin out of his like this delusion that like, oh, I'm gonna do it. Like, no, Dad. Yeah. Like Dory. Like you have to think like Dory, right? Mm-hmm. But it was that little glimmer of this like weird kind of conflict where it's like
that inched you forward.
That inched me forward because it's like, oh, maybe these not everything was really reconciled with the first film, and like we're kind of like exploring
and these feelings will bubble to the surface.
Anyway, that was funny. I like the bubbles.
Thanks.
So for me, that's not a criticism of that scene. My point being is that it started to really get this really interesting idea, but because the film isn't about that, the most we can get out of that little nugget is kind of this like After School Special-y kind of scene, and that kind of and going off of that topic, and you're gonna disagree on this. The film kind of feels a little After School Special-y because of that thing I was describing before, where it feels like it's being written by someone who really cares about this message, and that's the whole point of an After School Special.
Sure.
Is to, I mean, let's say Shakespeare was writing an After School Special. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it'll still have certain characteristics of basically like whatever the message is more paramount, to the story. Is more paramount to the story, to the narrative, and a lot of this film feels very. I brought up something during it, and I want to bring up this point now. When we were watching, I said to you that this film and like its thematic ideals seem to be having this weird, not necessarily antithetical or opposite relationship, but like weird contrasting relationship to the thematic ideals of The Incredibles.
Very interesting.
And I'm going to explain why. You're going to disagree and you're going to point to little things, but I think on a macro level, I think this is pretty clear.
On the surface level. Time, yes. Okay.
No, not on the surface level. On the
macro level.
No. Micro means more microscopic and examining the minute details. Whereas macro, I'm talking more in a clear, like seeing the forest for the trees.
Here we go.
So, seeing the forest for the trees. When you look at this film, Dory does stumble upon the answers.
No.
Yes. 100%. And I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
A big like milestone that everyone starts patting Dory on the back for is finding her parents, when she ends up finding her parents, right?
Sure.
Right? Mm. Do you know how she finds her parents? She's in the quarantine, and we have that amazing POV sequence. Which is really
that
cool.
shot is phenomenal. There's so many great showcases of the technology.
And do you want to know why that POV sequence is so cool? Because it creates a sense of helplessness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. She's just being whisked away. Mm-hmm. She's just being sucked away. Sure. There's no choices happening. Yeah. She gets sucked away and gets sucked into the ocean right smack dab next to her parents.
No, but she doesn't get like thrown in like, oh, there they are. She is sucked into the nothingness of the kelp forest, but really not even so much like the nothingness, just sort of that this sort of gets at this idea of there's a difference in terms of atmosphere between the two films, and they sort of talked about this. I think this was in like The Art of Finding Dory or something. They were talking about how in the first film it was very much about the vastness of the ocean, right? The isolation, the deep, the vacuousness of just the space, and it goes on and on and on forever. But with Finding Dory, what they do is, of course, it's not as much about being situated in the ocean. It's sort of this whole thing with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. But when we have this key scene of her being in the kelp forest, and it's evoking these ideals of a forest, the sort of mystery of a forest, the sort of whole then idea of what lies within, what's hidden, what's clouded, much like her memory, and it's more intimate and personal. And she has to then make a choice and navigate her way through that, and she has nothing to work off at that point. and she has to remember the cells and follow them, and it is done through a choice. She doesn't just get whisked into it. I know people talk about how then, like, oh, she's not an active protagonist in her own journey because then Hank's, like, carrying her around and stuff. Yeah, like, physically, he is. But she is always the one making the choices. She's always the one saying, we need to go this way, we need to go that way. She's directing him. It's just she is, like, physically incapable of then literally moving them in such a direction. And I really then, and I know people have talked about this, of that, like, she just sort of happens upon these solutions. But I really do have to say that I disagree, and I think it is consistent when they're just when they're just showing throughout the film the ways in which she remembers something, and how it always comes from somewhere. It's not out of nowhere. There will be something that will trigger her memory. It's not just, like, magically, like, oh, then, like, all of a sudden she just had to, like, think hard about it, and she like, figured it out. Like, I've heard that, like, sort of in view of the film before, and I really don't think that's what it is. I think it's getting at this different idea of how her mind works, and taking what's in front of her, and using that to her advantage. And it's totally justifying that as a way of looking at them.
But can I ask you, you see this idea of taking what's in front of her and using it to her advantage.
Yeah.
The only times, I think what you're referencing is when she sees something that she recognizes and then remembers it, and then, well, that's like an involuntary experience. Like, I'm trying to find the answer, I see the lamp, oh wait, the lamp! And I remember.
But it won't always
that doesn't really feel, like, I think the issue is not a strong character choices versus weak character choices. I think it's just strong character choices versus stronger character choices.
But it won't always be as direct as, like, oh, I forgot what I was doing.
Like, her
I forgot my pencil, and then a pencil will roll in front of her, and she'll go, oh. No, she'll sometimes have to make connections like, oh, I see the seagulls are going this way. That's the way the ocean. So then we have to take the car this way.
I'll use a specific line in the film. I'll use the film to my advantage.
All right, go ahead.
To prove the film wrong.
Oh, you'll use something that's right in front of you to your advantage, like Dory.
Yeah, actively, not just remember the film.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Not just, like, randomly poof it and now it's in my head.
All right. Yeah.
You know, you talk about this idea of, like, the forest. You make it sound like this really, like, big climactic, huge culminating critical choice of her decision to go into the forest. You know what she does? She's like, okay, the water, there's water, oh, there's a couple, that looks, I guess that looks better. Like, that's not a strong motivation to go into the kelp forest. She's just like, oh, I guess that looks better. That's the exact line. I noted it.
Sure.
And she goes in and she starts kind of looking around. She's like, oh, I don't see anything. And then sees a trail of shells. Maybe this could be something. Of course it would be something. Like you have to be, like, you actually have to be, like, you would have to be, like, what are the, I guess in the Finding Nemo universe they do, but don't starfish, like, not have, like, brains and they can't, like, sense. But you have to literally be, like, somehow, like, some sensory deprived being to not just follow the trail of shells.
All right, well, once he gets to that point, sure. But I would say, yes, I agree that there's a hesitance at that point, because at that point she's still carrying the burden of thinking that she lost her parents, that she is incapable, and she has this doubt in herself. Yeah. And it isn't until she reconnects with them and realizes the reconnection. The goal. Dory's parents aren't actually the goal of this movie. It isn't just finding Dory's parents. Dory's parents are a means by which, through the story, Dory is able to realize that she has the ability to have a valid thought process and work through things, and that there is merit to her views and her strategies. And once that's affirmed to her, she does have total confidence in the climactic scene of the whole thing with the truck. And I know a lot of people talk about, like, oh, how it, like, it's totally unrealistic, and it's like it's pushing, like, how exaggerated it is.
It jumps the whale.
You mean the whale shark?
Sure.
Okay. So, yeah, ha. So, yeah, like, I totally understand, like, there's a ridiculousness to that, but the way I see it, if this movie is all about sort of exploring Dory's off-kilter, unconventional way of looking at the world and the plans that result from it, there's no other way this movie can end than with her craziest plan yet. I think that totally makes sense, given, like, the tone of the film, sort of what Dory's all about, and what they're trying to reach with this film.
Couldn't the plan be her craziest plan yet within the confines of, like, the world we established? Like, it is the craziest plan yet, but now you've, like, completely, like, I don't want to say broken the rules of like, the world you've set up, but, like, you've with Finding Nemo, we talked about in Finding Nemo how, despite all the other films, it was not like some kind of fantastical thing.
Sure.
It's fantastical in the sense that we're able to, peer into the minds and the thought processes of fish. Assign them human emotions and thought processes, but like nothing about what's happening. Like you could photograph.
And I could totally understand that. But what I would say to it is, shouldn't the whole point in showcasing this idea of a totally new way of looking at things require us to fundamentally change kind of what we think is capable of happening?
But that's kind of like using the elements of the story to justify the writing process. It'd be like I've never seen it, but people, and this might work for the film, I've never seen it, but like people talk about Silver Linings Playbook and how it's uneven, and someone went, well, it's like being bipolar. It's like, that's not an excuse for right, like if the film is uneven, it's uneven. I've never seen it.
Sure.
But like if it feels like there's a huge tonal issue, just because the story happens to be about bipolar disorder doesn't justify your story. Sure. So in a similar way,
great
just
movie,
because the
but
film,
yeah, whatever. Okay.
No, I've never seen.
I know.
But let's just say there was a film that was about that, and that was the justification for it being uneven.
Yeah.
Well, like that's not justification.
No. I can agree, but I don't think. I think it's so entertaining. Not just does it like fit in with the themes of the film. It's so entertaining, and I do really enjoy that sequence that it doesn't bother me. When I was at first watching it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they are getting really crazy with it now. But it sort of then reminds me, like, this film actually reminds me in a lot of ways of Toy Story 2. And in that specific instance, it's when the toys drive the Pizza Planet truck in Toy Story 2. And there are a lot of other things in terms of just, you have then this character who comes across someone else who then is sort of then talk about, actually like sort of the inverse of Jesse, in which Jesse is afraid of being stuck in a tight place all along. Hank just wants to, be very much contained and feel safe. But yeah, just sort of all these ideas of, and it even sort of ends with a similar then kind of shot of two characters gazing off in the distance, sharing some final musings with each other. There are just a lot of little touches that seem to show an influence of Toy Story 2.
It's interesting you brought up the Toy Story 2 reference, because I wanted to touch on another thing. That goes back to the idea of the...
Did you ever make your Incredibles comparison?
No, I didn't.
Maybe you should do that first.
Okay, remind me to go back to the comparison to Toy Story 2.
Okay.
The thing I was going to say is, for me, if you... For this comparison to work, you have to agree with the supposition that a lot of Dory's, she does accomplish things, but it's not necessarily through, like, active, in my opinion, like, super active choices. A lot of it is kind of accidental stumbling upon things, and then making choices from there, but those choices aren't strong enough for me to feel super satisfied. Okay. Right? And they're so congratulatory about her. Like, you did it, Dory, you did it. Like, that scene goes on way too long when they're just like, oh my god, you did it, Dory, yes, you did it, we're so happy you did it.
Why would they dwell on the scene in which they're finally reunited after years and years?
I don't like the fact that she ends up finding them. I wish they had been dead.
Yeah, like, I understand that would have been darker.
No, not darker, just better.
But, like, why is it better? What does it do for the film that makes it better?
Because it's this goal that she's looking for, that like, oh, that's the answer, I need to find my parents, and then I'm doing it. No, the answer's in yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not through...
But they don't have to be dead for her to realize that. Because the climax doesn't ultimately...
Well, it's like in Moana.
It's like
in Moana. He gives up the staff, but he gets the staff back.
So you mean the hook? Yeah.
The hook, whatever it is. It's like, well, yeah, the fact that you get... There needs to be a sacrifice there.
But...
Do you know what I mean?
But one could argue that in this case, the fact that she's found her family makes it all the much of a stronger choice that she would still go back for Marlin and Nemo. Because it is a choice at that point. It's not like, well, I guess I don't have family, so I guess I'll just stay with them.
Sure, okay, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But even so, so I think... my point being is that this whole film, like they're so, especially like in the Flash. I guess she's little, but my point being, it's very like, oh, isn't that nice? It feels very after school, especially. Like, you did it, Dory. This is the point. Mm-hmm. You, despite your issues, you can still accomplish things.
Because it's a positive reinforcement parenting technique, which I think speaks to how parents of a child with
in contrast to
would interact. But how does it contrast to The Incredibles?
Well, this idea of rewarding mediocrity.
Oh.
She didn't really do that much, and they're upset, at least from my perspective, and they're like astonished of course, there's this whole element of mental disability, and that adds a wrinkle to it. But that being said, even within her own abilities, she's not. It doesn't even seem like she's doing that much, even within her own realm of capabilities. Mm-hmm. And in The Incredibles, that's the whole idea. Is the whole trophy generation and rewarding children for for not really true accomplishments. Mm-hmm. There's some merit to what maybe like a kid like oh you got like a good grade on this, like I can't think of an example, but like a participation trophy has merit because you did work hard, you tried. But
so Dory finding her family again, like crossing.
But she doesn't find her family. She stumbles upon finding her family. Mm. She doesn't really do a lot to find. Like Marlin is actively doing all of these things.
But you could say that in a specific vacuum of that scene that she's taken sort of somewhere, but she still then has to actively get to the aquarium. Also, she still has to actively get to the place where they would be. And sort of then navigate her way through that specific section. It's not like she just completely coincidentally found them.
I also thought, but I think she did. She just gets sucked out of the ocean.
But what were you going to say?
Well, I also thought another reason why the parents need to be dead is that they're there at the end in this after the climax.
Yeah.
She's acting like a little kid again. In a bad way.
What do you mean? She's acting
when she's back in the reef and she's with the parents okay, bye Dory, bye mommy, bye. And the way she interacted is if she's still now she's a little kid again. Isn't that more? No, I see again. I don't take notes during these because we record them on my phone. So if there was a lot of moments in this movie, specifically this movie, more so than all the others, where this would be a great this if I could just write down exactly what's going on right here. Okay, this would be a good point, but I can't. Yeah. So I guess I'm just gonna have to stumble my way through it. But in the end,
yes,
when she's with Marlin and they're all saying goodbye. I can't describe it, and then therefore it's not going to be convincing enough.
Go ahead.
But just their interaction felt very much like an adult woman, and her parents coddling her even as an adult woman. And again, that's not even I wouldn't find that convincing because I don't remember enough of it because I honestly don't remember a lot from this movie.
What I would say to that is the fact that they just
that's more problematic. I think that's problematic. Because it goes against the whole idea of the theme of her being self-reliant. And now she's kind of her parents are back, and her parents are going to take care of her.
But her parents aren't coddling her. They say goodbye to her for the day and then go on their way. And then Dory goes
the way a kid, but the way you do to a kid at school.
The way you do to a kid at school. No, because they're not dropping her off at school. Dory's going off and going to do something else. The parents don't just go to their own home and let their kid go off to the drop-off by themselves and be like, oh, okay, we trust that, then they'll go off. And I think it's really smart. This is just sort of bringing me into this whole connection of how we come back to the drop-off, which of course is such an important location for Finding Nemo, and getting back to something that was established in the very beginning of the first film, which was Marlin being like, look at that view. And it's something echoed in this film when he's talking about, can't we just for once stop and enjoy the view? And he even says the whole thing of we've done our ocean travels, that part of our lives is over, kind of alluding to the whole thing of, why do we need to have another one? It's over. But just this whole idea of being able to just stay and enjoy the view. And then finally, these two characters together are able to just sort of look at it and enjoy a comfortable silence and a confidence and a relief. And in themselves, because Marlin had to deal with his own form of anxiety, of constant then obsession over then what's going to happen to the people important to me because he went through a tragedy, and Dory as well, and just letting both of them gaze off into the view. And she's not I don't buy that she's being coddled by any means. I think she feels very independent. She feels self-sufficient. She feels like she could just then go off and do things and be fine. And the ending, the epilogue, I think definitely supports that. I do not get coddling from that.
Well, I mean, I do. She seems good. Why? Because you just have to, again, it goes back to this, it depends on the way you're looking at the whole film. If you feel like watching the whole film that she's just stumbling upon the answers, then it does. But if you do feel like she's an active protagonist, then it doesn't. But I think so it just has to go back to the way you're looking at the film in general.
I think even if you did feel that way, I don't think the parents are having overwhelming enough presence of her life as we glean through the epilogue in order for you to say that. And
I don't mean coddling did you brush your teeth, Dory? Did you? When I say coddling, just the way they're interacting, as if she's a little kid still. The way they're interacting with her, parents talk to you differently when you're an adult than when you're like 4 years old.
All right.
Again, I can't make a good argument because I can't pull up the clip right now.
But
if
again,
only we had like it was like Sports Center, I could pull up the clip.
If they're maybe a little bit like specific in what they're saying, maybe it has something to do with the fact that they were separated for years and years. But the fact that they're still confident enough to go off and leave her be, I think says a lot. I think that.
I don't like in movies when characters have been separated for years, and once they reunite, they're talking as if like they never were separated again. But they need to relearn when Dory finally stumbles upon them.
Well, now you're just saying the opposite point. Now you're saying that they're not coddling her enough. Like, what are you trying to?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about coddling. I'm talking about when she first meets them. Though, just the way they're talking, feel like there's a familiarity there. Like, no, this is like a new person. Like your daughter's been missing for like 20 years. Like, right? Like something. Yeah. Like you need to like. They're talking as if she's like been gone for like a week. And
I don't.
When she comes back,
because they're talking, they think that she's been alone all this time, and she has to fill them in on everything that's happening.
I'm not talking about the coddling.
No. I'm not talking about that either. I'm just thinking, I don't think that's really an issue, but
the writing just is very like plain and indicative. It's just very like, oh, there's a very striking moment in the beginning. Like I really liked the very 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 first scene. And she's talking. And
I love how it starts on her looking at the camera. It's almost like an Annie Hall kind of, or like a what is it? Like a when Harry Met Sally like cutaway thing of just like face to the camera. I like there's something. It's cool to see that in animation. Just, you don't really see that often because it's not like a literal camera, obviously. But it was just a cool way to start. Yeah, getting right into the perspective, almost as if it's like a testimonial. Like I have short-term memory loss. Yeah, it was just a smart choice. But anyway, go ahead.
I like that scene because it's done really subtly until like the very end, where it's like, Mom, Dad, is the movie gonna happen? No, honey, the movie's not gonna happen. like basically they're talking and Dory forgets something and she goes, oh, did I forget? They go, no, you're fine. And like,
what
it's
if
really,
I forget you?
And then they just go, what if I forget you? That's a jump.
Which, yes, I agree it's a jump, but what I said to that...
Not justified to the character, though. Like, not like, oh, like, she's making a jump. Like, no, like, the script is making the jump. Because it only has so much time to do this, and they want to get this point across.
But I think that's definitely key to Dory in that her mind will shift, and she talks about this whole idea of thoughts leave her head and ideas change, and she just kind of... That's sort of an aspect of the alienating way, and occasionally, in which Dory can interact with someone. And it'll kind of like throw them off, and she'll just suddenly be on a different level thinking about something else, and it'll be an abrupt shift. And I think it's important to address that.
But that seems more of a rationalization for a script problem.
Yeah, I don't think so, because that's something that like occurs at other points, and it's not just for that one. Like, oh, let me cover it up with this little. But yeah.
How would she even get that idea in her head that she would forget? She doesn't even know like left from right. Like how would she even get that idea in her head?
Because they were literally just talking about this idea of having forgotten something, and I don't know. I think like she has a lot of anxiety at the core of her. So
how old is she meant to be? Like 2? Oh, I have anxiety.
Yeah, little babies have anxiety sometimes. Okay. She's not like 2 months old.
Popping some Xanax.
She's not 2 months old.
Jeez. She looks like, and I love the cute design, but it's like it was designed to be like as cute as humanly possible, officially possible. Yeah, I just feel like the parents being there more like this haunting thing, and like in a good way, like almost like being this presence in her life, but never actually like in a physical way, could have been really cool, and that's how it exists for most of the film. I really love the flashbacks, and I love when they do like the
like sort of the ghosts of them.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the shot where Dory gets sucked up into the thing, but it kind of fades into Dory getting like the baby Dory
and seeing her parents. Yeah,
that's really cool cinematic stuff, and there's not enough of stuff like that.
I think this movie actually has a lot of that, just in terms of how it's interweaving both of them.
I want more because it's not enough. Because they only do they do the flashbacks don't count because flashbacks are just flashbacks. Okay,
but a lot of the entries and exits to the flashbacks, and also just cutting in between the Dory storyline and the Marlin Nemo storyline. There's really interesting like camera work and staging that I have to applaud. But yeah, like they'll do shots where like the camera goes like it's above water, goes under the water, comes back out of the water, all in one shot. I'm like, oh my god. Oh. Like, broke the computer rendering that one.
This is kind of tangential.
Yeah.
But I want to bring it up now.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say my point, and I know it's gonna send you off into a tirade. And I'm not gonna argue with your tirade because I don't see any point in trying to argue with it.
Go ahead.
I quite, as much as I complained about it in our review. I really love Finding Nemo.
Okay.
The original film, right? And I love all the characters and everything, and particularly Dory. She's so good, and I think Ellen DeGeneres does such an amazing job in Finding Nemo.
Oh no.
It's probably one of my favorite Pixar performances.
Yes, it's a great performance. What are you gonna say?
This is her performance. This is one of the worst Pixar performances.
That's ridiculous.
It's very phoned in, and if I could, talking about going play by play, there was a part where she said "oh no," it sounded like "oh no," and it wasn't in the context. If you heard the context, it was not like she would be saying it like that. There was parts of the film. See, I can't describe this without pulling up an exact thing. But no, I promise you, the context of it was a dire situation, and she went, "Oh no."
Ellen, I think Ellen DeGeneres'
she does she's trying to do her. She's trying to replicate what she was doing in the first film because there's no variance. For 95% of the film, she's doing the Tom Holland from Spider-Man: Homecoming going, I have a family. Wait, I just remembered.
I definitely disagree. I think there's a lot of sincerity and vulnerability and helplessness and kind of subtlety in how she'll just kind of speak in these hushed tones. But
there's not a lot of hushed tone. But the hushed tone parts work.
There's a lot of talking to herself, and I think that's almost kind of the defining voice of a lot of this. She's not doing a lot of frantically my family, they have that part in the trailer. But there's a lot of just sort of kind of talking to herself, and okay, what do I do? And really showcased well in the whole thing with the pipe sequence, which I think is in a vacuum sort of encapsulates the film in the sense that it is kind of distilling itself to it's a very internal struggle. So the pipes, it's literally just a few directions that she has to remember, but it is such a challenge for her because it's something that she has to remember on her own, and it's practically impossible. And it's really the maze of the pipes is very much the frenzied nature of the thoughts in her own mind trying to connect them all. But what she then has to realize through that is that she can ask for help and she doesn't have to depend entirely on herself. And the movie sort of shows in a wonderful way all of these. It's very thematically sound in the sense that pretty much every character that they come across is getting at this idea of disability or helping someone else through in the way that you see Bailey helping Destiny and giving her tips of when there's a wall and it's your destiny, and just everyone's then sort of working together and using their own skills where the other may be lacking and being surprised at the talent of the other consequently. And I think just everything with the pipes shows that off really well and establishes that it's okay that then this movie does sort of then take place in this one big location rather than being this huge journey. It is very internal for Dory, and it is about, even though it is something that seems so small, it's all about what it is from her perspective. And if it's a challenge for her, then the stakes are there. Then the stakes are high, even if it's not crossing the whole ocean, even if it's just getting through a few pipes. If it's that big a deal in her head, then it'll be that big a deal for us.
Yeah.
So
I don't think the emotional stakes are high enough because in Empire Strikes Back, the stakes aren't as high as in A New Hope.
Right.
It's emotional stakes.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it's like that. I don't think the emotional stakes are as high as the emotionality of the original film.
Okay. That, and I think that's a fair thing to say. But let me remind you, if you were going to make a Toy Story 2 comparison, what was that?
I know.
Yeah.
So you bring up the specific comparison with the car, the car kind of thing, these creatures who normally wouldn't drive a car, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why it works in Toy Story is because we already know, for two reasons. One, I'm not gonna number the reasons because I might come up with more. So I limit myself. In Toy Story, right? We've already seen the toys interact with the human world, basically we're gonna just utilize this world, the human civilization. Yeah, we're smaller, but we'll just figure it out. But we'll do what they do, right? And also, it's a fantastical world.
It is, yeah.
Right. So toys driving cars, right? Whereas in Finding Nemo, like I said in the original film, it's set up very much like the fish are going to behave like fish.
That's fair. That's fair to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that part, as well as with a lot of the film, but I'll just talk about the truck climax, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the movie is spent when you have a movie about fish,
You don't think it'll end with a car chase?
Not even that. No, just in reference to the whole film. I want to see them in water more. Whereas in this movie, they're like in tanks, but in predominantly on lands.
But I think that speaks to the fact that they're really kind of fundamentally overhauling what they could do with these characters in the world.
But it just limits. You know what it feels like? Because this does not seem like the logical story to do. Not in terms of Dory's self-discovery. I don't think you would have to do it in an aquarium. I think the reason why is because they exhausted all of their good ideas in the ocean. Yeah, no, seriously. And then you get glimpses of that because we do like the crush thing again. You know, they want to get you out of the ocean as soon as possible.
They definitely do.
And the crush thing, I think we even both agree the crush part feels a little shoehorned.
I think that...
And Anderson's performance was a little like, I'm doing crush.
Not like, when watching it this time, I didn't feel it as much, but I think the scene itself definitely rings as like the most hollow scene in the film.
And then immediately after that, there's the thing with the squid that lasts for like a minute and a half.
Also feels like a hollow sort of then recreation of the danger.
Yeah, exactly. They want to get you out of the ocean as like soon as possible.
And I think that was a smart choice.
Yeah,
very smart choice. Because with the turtles, but I think it bears saying, because I think about how in the first film it was such a meaningful moment with the when they know, you'll know, and here it's literally just regurgitating the gags of Marlin feels like he's gonna be sick.
Yeah,
and there's nothing further to it than that, and then they're out of it. Boom. It doesn't.
Like, the movie wants to be a different movie. But like the writer like knows that they have to be fish, so they're gonna try to find ways they can get around. But that even though like they're fish, in a dry land environment, and not like we're gonna see these characters. It feels more like we kind of want to do this plot, but like they're fish, so we need to figure out like Hank will put her in a thing and then carry her around. Well, it's very convenient now that you have a character who can go on dry land and move her around and everywhere. And it doesn't feel like. Again, it's not bad. It's just not super.
It doesn't
strong.
Seem like the most obvious story that you would do.
No, but not like
Dory doesn't make the most obvious decisions.
Again, that's trying to rationalize. I understand you're memeing, but like again, I don't think using the world of the story to rationalize flaws with a film works.
Because you're saying it's easier for fish to navigate an ocean, so once you take them out of it, it sort of handicaps the narrative,
so to speak. Sure. And but the narrative can't be. I don't want to watch a handicapped narrative. Learn to not. It's okay to be handicapped. I want to see characters who are handicapped, but narrative should not be handicapped. And maybe not handicapped. And that was you more trying to pigeonhole me so you could make some kind of point. But I wouldn't say handicapped. I think a better way to do it is it's more that you want to try to tell a different story. But you have fish, so you need to figure out how you can do this story, but with fish.
But that puts us in the position of Dory, because
we're
literally a fish out of water, and we're literally ha. But it's putting us in this world in which it's a stroke of brilliance, because you think about I'm dead serious, because you think about with Dory and this whole idea of then a world in which you can't completely do a lot of things on your own, right? And you find yourself having to depend on others a lot.
Sure.
That when you're a fish taken out of water and you have like an octopus carrying around in a coffee pot, like that's then.
And characters aren't they have to be helped by other people.
No, but it's okay that then she's getting helped by people. She has direction, she has will, she has her own voice, but we are then being put into this condition, this perspective of being stuck in this world.
There's a lack of agency. Like, I'm spending more time watching Marlin figure out how to hop across the yard as opposed to him like dealing with thematic issues. Like I'm seeing more. I think
there's a lot of dealing with thematic issues though, because
but the primary focus of the plot is more problem solving. How am I going to get across it's very specific and overall in terms of the course of the narrative irrelevant.
No, but it is completely relevant, because thematically, problem solving and the way that we look at figuring things out is the whole point.
But you're looking at the frame. What relevance does the hopping across the water, not before like the conversation with Nemo? What does that specifically have to do with anything? It could have been anything. It could have been any obstacle, right?
The part with discussing what would Dory do,
but it could have been any obstacle following it, right?
Well, not any obstacle. It would have to be something that would be an unconventional choice that they would look upon.
Any obstacle that they use an unconventional choice.
you could have variants to it, sure, but you could do that with anything in any movie. Be like, well, anything that reflects this character's fear, then you could do. I don't really see what you're trying to say.
What I'm trying to say is that the characters, it's more trying to figure out these minute problems than really dealing with things. You're saying, oh, but they are dealing with things. But they're this pressing issue of what would Dory do doesn't feel, it's not urgent enough for me.
Sure.
For Marlin, like, it's not urgent. That's not like these are weak. Like Hank wants the tag so he can rest comfortably. There's not enough urgency there for me.
Again,
Wait, in Finding Nemo, I have to find my son. No. He's going to die.
I agree. Those are very high stakes, just like objectively, as to what is happening. And I think Finding Dory does posit itself as more internal, as more recontextualizing what it is we want, what it is. Do I want to then stay like comfortably safe and not like we allude to the fact he lost a tentacle and the whole thing, he doesn't want to be touched. So all these ideas of what do I want, what would a character do, what can I like accomplish.
And I think the overall thing, and I think I don't know how much more I can really talk about this movie because I really don't have enough to really say about it. Is I think the biggest flaw I think of it is that lack of urgency, where the thrust of the film is Dory's self-discovery, and the question becomes, well, other than just the fact that I love Dory from the original film, why should I care? Like what does she have to lose? For me, the only she has to lose. Like, there's an answer.
The faith in herself.
But okay, but she's still living like a comfortable.
She's not going to lose her son. She's going to lose the potential of reuniting with her parents, but it's not as urgent as with
I'm not even just like it's urgent, but not as much in comparison. I didn't really feel urgent because she's still living like a comfortable life with her friends, and it's really not that bad. It's just as soon as she remembers her parents, then it suddenly becomes about it. Like she wasn't living like a bad life before.
Sure.
It wasn't even like I just feel like something's missing, and then she remembers her parents. It's not like she's like, I feel out of place. I feel like I'm not living up to some kind of potential that I could be living up to. And then she remembers her parents. That doesn't happen. She's living a perfectly happy life until she remembers her parents. So what's at stake? She doesn't remember her parents, and she doesn't, I guess, find this agency that the film pretends she gets at the end, but I really don't feel like she gets at the end. So for me, I think that's the overall flaw with the film, is that the impetus for its existence. I will joke about it. I just want to shoehorn this in somewhere in our discussion. Sure. Even if you think the movie's done well.
Here we go. Mr. Cynic comes.
I don't think this is cynical. I think this is clear as day.
Okay, go ahead.
Because even movies that I like, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like even movies that I like, I can maybe understand that there was like a cynical reason why it was made. Yeah. But so it isn't like it's okay for it to both be at the same time.
Okay. So
right? It's Anderson can be a human being who wants money. And the reason being is so he makes Finding Nemo, Andrew Stan, makes Wall-E, and like all directors in animation apparently, they want to go do live action. Like I want to go do it. Brad Bird was very successful. And in a similar way, we'll talk about Brad Bird maybe after I explain this. So Andrew Stan makes, if you don't know, goes to make the critically and commercially powerhouse, successful film, John Carter. And by critically and commercially successful, I mean like possibly one of like the lowest performing both commercially and critically in Disney's history. It's a huge flop, huge complete failure on every level. And then his next film is Finding Dory, which you yourself even said, out of all the Pixar films, seemed the least open to having a sequel.
Sure.
Right? I do not. I think Disney, the company, not Pixar, Disney. I mean, it's no coincidence that we've seen more sequels of Pixar films since Disney acquired Pixar. Like, that's clear, right? No, that's just a coincidence that as soon as Disney buys, they greenlight Cars 2.
What it speaks to is the fact that they're out of a contract in which they had to make original films. They had the option to now be able to make sequels with their own characters. That like it wasn't just they have to like fulfill this certain amount. I think Disney
had been
coaxing them.
Had been trying to flirt with Pixar to make some kind of Finding Nemo follow-up.
Okay.
And for the longest time, Andrew Stan was like, no, I really want to do it. And then following the complete failure of John Carter, he kind of starts to relook at things and go, oh, well, maybe we could do some kind of Finding Dory. And then in earnest starts to develop some kind of story. But I think the overall impetus for this film's creation comes from Andrew Stanton's failed live action career, and kind of, without him even realizing, not saying like, oh, I just want money. No, I think it's kind of like when you fail with something, what do? You fall back on what you love and what you were good at, and you go back to revisit those. I think if John Carr was successful, you would not see a Finding Dory. If John Carr had been very successful, he would have gone on to do multiple things, maybe done a Marvel movie or some other live action Disney film, like a Jungle Book.
You could see some of his latest work in season 2 of Stranger Things. Stranger Things 2. He directed 2 of the episodes. Great episodes.
I think
he's John definitely Carter, he's not a failure in terms of live action.
But I think that's more on the that's small scale enough. Like there's not too much riding.
But Stranger Things is like pretty big at this.
No, but I mean in terms of financials.
I could
people are gonna watch Stranger Things no matter who directs it.
Sure.
And he's not writing the script. Like he's not the creator of this content. He's more like just bringing it to life. If John Carr had been successful, I do not think you would see a Finding Dory. I think he would have had I think he would have focused more on live action. The movie can still be good.
Yeah.
But I think that's the impetus of it.
Sure.
And I think that reflects the urgency where the film feels like, okay, I guess this story exists. If you do it well, sure. If you think it's done well, sure. But I think
it's fair to address that context. I think that's fair.
Whereas with Toy Story 2, I feel like it really does, it doesn't feel like, oh, okay, we'll do another one. Like, it feels like it really is. Like, it really does feel like, would you say this is better than Finding Nemo? Not to...
Finding Dory?
Yeah.
I couldn't go so far as to say that. No.
Whereas, would you say Toy Story 2 is better than Toy Story?
I would say Toy Story 2 is better than Toy Story. But that's kind of... What ends up happening is that with Toy Story, they were able to do sort of the next chapter of the story, right? And not just, like, build off the themes, but, like, really, like, continue Woody's arc. And with Finding Nemo, I think it was because you couldn't do a straight-up sequel to that storyline. So it was more just shifting the focus over, doing the story with Dory. It's almost in a sense kind of a spin-off.
It feels kind of like a, and not in a bad way, but it feels like a
which
TV
I think was
movie
the right
spin-off
choice.
Or something.
I wouldn't say TV movie spin-off, but like a spin-off. And I think that was the right choice given what was established before and how if you tried to then do a straight sequel to Finding Nemo, it would have felt way too much like a rehash. And I really do have to give a lot of credit to the level of restraint that like we don't even see the Sarks again or anything. We have that like little funny joke about how Marlin's changing the story. Like, oh, now there's 4 Sarks? I thought the last time you told there were 3. No, there are definitely 4. Because like they could have done a bunch of like cute things at the beginning of like, we established in the epilogue of the last movie that Dory keeps going to the Sarks like the AA meetings. So they could have had a funny scene early on when she's like voicing her strife there. But they don't do that. Like Bruce Anchor and Sean aren't in this movie. And like, that's like they are hugely popular character. Like Bruce is like very, very popular. If you look at the original poster for Finding Nemo, he's the biggest character on that poster. But yeah, none of that. No Nigel and Tank Gang only in a post-credit scene, which is very charming and great. But yeah, so the level of restraint and not repeating themselves, I think, is really something to be admired. And when they do with like Crush or whatever, it's very quickly they get through it as quick as possible. It's just this is our means to get across the ocean, and then it's done. Okay, that's it. We're moving on, doing our own thing. So I can really definitely appreciate that. So I guess at this point I'll just kind of go through some last lingering notes because I know you said you didn't really have that much else to bring up. But yeah, I briefly mentioned this when talking about Finding Nemo, but originally they had the whole sort of thing of interweaving a flashback structure of Marlin and Coral's relationship throughout that film, and it's really just kind of interesting to see how that ended up being very much like ingrained in the structure of this film.
That's one of my favorite parts of this film.
And it feels like definitely much more appropriate here because unlike in the case of Finding Nemo where the whole problem was it doesn't make sense that we're suddenly becoming privy to these events because Marlin is always privy to the events and we're just sort of learning more about him. Whereas in this, we're learning it at the same time.
We're on the journey with her. Yeah.
We're on the journey with her, which is a really smart way of using flashbacks. So very, very ingenious way of bringing that back. Sigourney Weaver, the whole thing, like that's a really funny running gag. I love that she's this disembodied voice, much like she was in Andrew Stanton's prior Pixar film, WALL-E. She was the computer. She was the voice of the computer.
Oh,
Sigourney
really?
Weaver, yeah. So it really is kind of like an interesting sort of correlation, and yeah, just there is this sort of dissonance in that it is this real celebrity, and hearing like sort of like the deifying of her. It's just a really interesting sort of strange choice that I think really gives this movie a comedic edge. And also we talk about how in some Pixar movies they don't necessarily earn what exactly they make the characters, like you say about, like, why does cars have to be cars, whatever. I think this is a story you could definitely only do with fish. Like, this whole idea of then the parents are kept in this, like, this aquarium, and, like, how they would have been isolated, and, you know, they're them being potentially taken away to like another set. Like there are so many elements of which, like, you could really just only do this with fish. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. I do think we should briefly talk about the Gerald in the room, which is Gerald, you know, the sea lions, and how you touched on this whole idea, and this is something that I've seen other people talk about, that the sea lions that try to get Gerald off the rock, it's like it's seemingly in contrast to this whole idea of supporting people who are different than us, who like have disability, whatever, because they're so like rude and mean and like not inclusive towards him, to which I definitely had that concern while I was watching the film, but I think the fact that then he does claim his spot on the rock eventually, and they don't try to like affirm it, even though we're sort of then laughing at the beginning, you could take, this is really a stretch, but I guess you could take it as sort of a commentary on how we've journeyed through in Finding Nemo when we would laugh at Dory, to then now we're on the side of Gerald. Although I will admit,
you need to do Finding Gerald, because we're laughing at this character, and that's not fair for him. And now we're gonna thrust him into the forefront.
I will admit, I think they could have. I think going so cartoonish with, like, literally, like they have like an iris out on Gerald at the end when he's like on the rock, and like after the credits, and it just it's a bit. I think that is a bit miscalibrated. But I don't think it compromises the narrative, and that it is just sort of, so, like, if you just accept it as it's a negative example of how to look at someone and be potentially excluding them, and that he does in a way come on top at the end, that it can work. But, you know, I totally understand when people talk about how that's something to potentially take issue with.
Yeah.
I'm extremely impressed by the replacement voice that they got for Nemo.
Yeah, no, I will say that it sounds just like him.
Utterly, like, uncanny. Like, you were talking about how after Jim Varney passed, and how, like, Blake Clark took over Slinky and you really can't tell. This is like, wow. Like, I don't think about it at all. Like with Toy Story 3, there is, they replaced, like, of course, John Morris, who voiced Andy in the original films, does reprise his role as adult Andy, but they have Charlie Bright fill in as the young Andy in the home videos, and it does sound a little bit different to me. But I think this, in this case, with Nemo, they just does such a great job at sounding like identical. It really is uncanny. I have to give so much credit to Hayden Rollins for matching what Alexander Gould did, and it feels like an authentic extension of the character. And it's nice to see that he still has a little cameo in the film as one of the drivers that Hank and Dory sway out of the truck at the end. That's really cool how they always kind of, you know, do right by that. So that's really great. I touched on that. I like kind of this whole idea of Hank talking about how, like, there's actually a benefit to having no memory and sort of living in bliss, just sort of no memories, no problems. I wish they leaned into that a little bit more. Like, again, like, I think this movie does so much musing and so much inward thinking that not all of it is necessarily paid off by the end. Although I do it's nice that at the end Dory does sort of then talk about all this stuff of like a lot of the best things in life happen by chance, and that's me with you, and not you living like alone for the rest of your life. It's nice, like it definitely does seem like she's sort of just like improving it and trying to find a meaning in what's happening, but that feels authentic to her character, and she is just sort of like slapping it together. But it is supported by the film, and I do really like this idea of Dory being in favor of things that have just sort of like occurred potentially inadvertently, but running with them and appreciating and finding the meaning in them, and maybe seeing the destiny in it all. So that's really nice. That Clam is really funny.
Oh my god, that's really my favorite
funny.
part. That's my favorite part of the movie. Can we talk about the Clam for just like 5 seconds? My favorite part of the movie.
It feels
Hands
like a
down.
classic.
Sorry, but
it feels like a classic Pixar side character. Doesn't it?
That's why I like it so much. It feels like something out of like Monsters Inc.
Yeah,
I think.
it does.
Whereas
Just the way the voice sounds.
The bit you pointed this out, that the animation's so great because it's a shot from behind the clam and its mouth is opening so much it's filling the frame and blocking Marlin. But every time it goes down, Marlin's expression's getting like more and more like
it's changing,
concerned.
And
it's
more
so
like
funny.
fed up. It's hilarious. What a great scene. Yeah, like
you're making very interesting points. I don't want you to think I'm not listening. And
No,
then, the clam came in. That's all I care about.
No, I know that was something to like chip in on. But whereas I'm making like these long like things that like you wouldn't necessarily know how to connect to. Like that's something that you could jump in on and say. The clam.
Well, I want to see Finding Clam, guy.
Finding Clam. No, you know what I want to see? I want to see Finding Gil and Hank, the buddy movie. These two really crazy living life on the edge people who have like are like have pulled off these crazy escapes working together. I want to see that crazy buddy movie. That would be awesome. But anyway, we were talking about like the great shot of her POV, a lot of really great animation, like just choices and showing what they could do with the technology. The open ocean exhibit looks gorgeous. Oh my god! Like literally when I was in the theater, like no joke, I went, wow, oh.
And then someone went, could you
please be quiet? And I started yelling at them, and they escorted me out of the theater for being disrespectful.
You tell them it was directed by Andrew Sand, not John Lasseter on the surveys.
yeah, exactly. Just like I did. Yeah, that's a reference to Ratatouille when I made that comment at a previous screening. Haha. So yeah, I think that sort of then goes through everything that I wanted to say.
Let's get to rankings.
About the film. Let's get to rankings. All right.
I don't know where you'll put this.
I'm gonna have to figure it out too.
Do you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up yours. Oh, hold on.
Oh god, we got technical difficulties.
No. Hang on. Just you wait.
Oh god, I can't wait. I'm dying. Ugh.
Oh no, just like you think Dory's parents sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I said as a joke. I shouldn't have actually done this, but I said as a joke during it that she finds the hut like after, like at the end when she goes, like follows the clams or the shells rather, and finds them, but like finds their dead bodies like they died. They've been waiting for her, but she didn't make it. So like
it's like a horror movie.
One's a skeleton and one has clearly just died. So one of them had to live alone, waiting for Dory, and then recently just died, and it's starting to decompose.
It's twisted. It's absolutely twisted.
And Dory's like, oh wait. Who are these people? Because you wouldn't remember. But anyhow.
Oh boy, that's really messed up. Okay. No.
Oh, I know. I think I know. Oh, I don't know. No, okay, no. I'm gonna do the one that I don't get shanked.
Only if you believe in it.
I think I.
Don't just do it out of fear.
Even though it's a good.
Arlo the dinosaur. Don't let fear control you. See the beauty.
Okay, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm not gonna let the fear.
Oh no! Wait, I didn't actually mean it. Fear. Oh, I'm gonna scare you. Whoa, boo!
You can't get mad at me.
Oh no! Oh boy! I swear to God.
You're gonna get so mad at me. You get really mad at me. Now remember these rankings. Okay, we're ranking them not on what we think is better, necessarily, but just what we find more dear to our heart, and what we would rather pop in and watch.
I think this is about to be a core sad memory for me.
This is about to be a core sad memory.
I wonder what the inside of Dory's head looks like. There's just no one there.
There's one person walking around and go, where'd I put that? Where'd I put the
core memories? Oh no.
Where'd I put the? Okay, you ready?
Okay.
From bottom to top.
Oh, bottom to top. Okay. Good. I'm glad it's not a top to bottom movie. Because when we do top to bottom, that means it's like at the bottom.
Well.
What? Okay, go ahead.
The Good Dinosaur, Cars 2, Brave.
All right, we're out of the danger zone.
A Bug's Life, Finding Dory,
Jesus
Cars,
Christ.
Up, Inside Out, WALL-E, Toy Story 3, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Monsters University, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Ratatouille, and The Incredibles. And let me explain why.
You're insane.
For, insanity, people like insanity. Insanity is how we... unusual and unorthodox choices, right? Isn't that what Dory does?
Dory would never do this.
Dory would never do this. And the reason being for two reasons that really are more for me.
Okay.
Like, I was trying to bring... I was going to put Finding Dory above Cars because, although I harped on this movie, there are a lot of really interesting elements.
Yeah.
Like, I liked... Like, when, like, we see the memories... we see the memories. B, when we see the memories as, like, their ghosts. That great shot when it's, like, Dory in the present getting sucked away, but then it morphs into her getting sucked away as a baby. There's actually a lot of really interesting cinematic things, which, tickles my fancy. Yeah. And a lot of great shots. And not just shots like, ooh, the rendering looks good, but actually really well-composed framing that insinuates. Good use there's more artistic stuff in there. But, seriously, no, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, how are we ranking these? Mm-hmm. What I'd rather pop in. I loved Cars as a kid. I grew up with Cars. Mm-hmm. So it was... And I would rather pop in and watch Cars because it's easier and there's less for me to get annoyed about. Like, Cars is consistently this, like, dumb movie.
Easier. I feel like the Captain and Wally.
Easier. Whereas with this, like, the highs, there's only, the highs for me are few and far between. The highs that are there are really cool. I will say. Sure. The stuff that I really like in this movie. Mm-hmm. But, there's too much for me to get frustrated with as a filmmaker. That, whereas with Cars, I don't get frustrated with Cars because it's not trying to do too much, so I don't get as frustrated watching it.
It didn't get its hopes too high, to paraphrase Buck Cluck from Chicken Little.
Chicken Little, yeah. Just don't get your hopes too high. We should watch that one.
What a great father! That's a big part of the countdown to Coco. Yeah.
But he's a flawed father. That's the point. He doesn't want his son to get hurt.
Yeah, well, I want him to not ever be in the same room as his son again.
Yeah, I mean, DCYF would probably agree with you. But anyhow, so. Like, I'm very aware, like, of a crazy choice this is, but at the end of the day, what does it come down to? Which one we'd rather watch? Yeah. For personal... half the reasons I was describing, like, filmmaking purposes and also just sentimental purposes, I'd rather pop in Cars. Just personally.
Okay. Okay, you sentimental, you rage on Pixar for getting more sentimental.
Overtly sentimental to the point of hijacking narrative, yes.
Dear, okay. Oh, boy. This is really tough.
I'm really interested to see. Can I see your list?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see.
This might take me a little bit, because I'm really, like, usually I'll know sort of, like, the zone that I'm operating in, but with this, I'm, like, my eyes are going, like up and down, like, I'm really...
Well,
I'm really
would you say it's better than the original?
As I said before, I don't think I would.
Then you know it's not. Then you know it's below.
So I know it's below there.
And for those of you who can't see it, obviously, because we're just looking at the screen, that's his number 5 right now, right? Or no, it's 6?
No, now it's 6. So it goes from top to bottom: Toy Story 3, Toy Story 2, Toy Story, Inside Out, The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, Up, WALL-E, Ratatouille, Monsters University, Monsters Inc., Cars, A Bug's Life, and then I did Return, a huge space, Danger Zone, The Good Dinosaur, Cars 2.
So let's go through it. So what's the one immediately under Finding Nemo?
So
what's the one right under Finding Nemo? Right?
I think it's easier to do from bottom up than to do from
skip
top.
the gap. So what's the first one like in like the actual
A Bug's Life, and I think it's better than A Bug's Life.
Okay, and then after that,
it's Cars, which I don't know why anyone would put it below Cars.
Okay, so what's after Cars?
So then we get into Monsters Inc. and Monsters University, and this is then difficult. I feel like Monsters Inc. and Monsters University are really then sort of lumped together. Like it would either be below both or above both.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So like it wouldn't be in between them. Like that doesn't really make sense. But I just think about sort of then what would you rather pop towards. What I'm inclined towards and what's really like connecting with me is I think about like just sort of the use of Ed O'Neill as Hank and how they sort of they do similar to in the first movie how they have these foils and these like connections of it's this character standing in for another character, and it's sort of like it's the equivalent to Marlin, but also has like his own sense of integrity and his own then sort of concerns and has to learn to embrace others again, and just like everything dealing with these ideas of having another way to look at the world around you. And it does, like, I feel personally attached to what's established in Finding Dory, and not just on a surface level, but in how they really like kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. Because I think what's so smart is I sort of then talked about this with Monsters University, how it's like an underdog movie that ends up so like even though it's all about like he can't do it, oh no actually he can't, no wait actually he can. So it's really like a disguise for a story that's deeper. Whereas this, like, you could say it in a few ways. You could say it's an empowering narrative for someone with a disability, which that's really interesting. And then also just this idea of, it's a story about, like, finding someone else seemingly objectively, but it ends up being a much more, like, internal story about finding oneself and dealing with all these self-reflexive themes that I really find myself connected to. And just sort of, like, myself, like, to get personal, growing up, then, like, I had trouble with, like, physical things sometimes, like, like, whatever, like folding something, or, like, cutting with scissors, or, like, buttoning buttons and whatever. And it, like it was difficult for me, and I know, like, even in, like, preschool, I stayed in it an extra year, and it was, like, all this business of, like, then is that, like being ready to move on, and, like, if you're able to then do something, and you do sort of then develop this chip on your shoulder through that of, like, you feel like you really need to prove yourself, and it does, you feel very vulnerable, and that carries with you. And I think Finding Dory does tap into that, because it taps into the constant struggle of Dory being met with these other people in her life that they'll just pass her by, so constantly be meeting, like, the reason she stops with Marlin is Marlin's the first person to, like, really give her the time of day and not just brush her off. And, like, even though she's being so polite and trying to be helpful to other people, they're not concerned. They won't talk to her or believe in her. Whereas, so I do think, and just the way they get at, she has these different sort of ways of dealing with the stuff in her life. I think it is very powerful, and I think that's enough to get it over the Monsters films. And now I'm thinking of if it can go further, because then above that is we got our Ratatouille, we got our WALL-E, and we got our Up, and then Finding Nemo, which, as I said, I'm not putting it above Finding Nemo. So it's in this zone, which is the 2007 to 2009 zone of really interesting artsy films that have, like, flaws to them, but, like, each one, like, in my opinion, got better and better. And yeah, so this is going to be really tricky, because I think there are there are stretches of Finding Dory that definitely they can find kind of then sort of feel like weak or antic-y, I guess, and not reaching the same level of meaning. But then there are other points at which it feels deeper than much of them. So it's kind of hard to justify. But I think ultimately, Finding Dory does end up committing to these sort of truer, like notions of what it means to, like, have a different outlook on life, and it isn't just sort of antic-y. So I'm really trying to think about this. I don't think I could put it above Up. Definitely, I think Up is just it's so intimate, and Carl's arc is really nice. And even though I feel like I feel like Finding Dory then sort of handles, like, supporting character arcs better than Up maybe does. Up is just, like Up is done really well. Oh geez, now I'm second guessing myself. Well, whatever. Well, let me think about, like,
go one step at a time.
I'll go one step at a time. Ratatouille.
What would you rather watch right now, Ratatouille or Finding Dory? I know we just watched it, so it's hard.
I know, I know we just watched it.
But I mean, like, but in a general sense, like what do you think you'd rather be inclined to watch? What speaks to you more?
What speaks to me more? Well, the thing with Ratatouille is,
for me, Ratatouille obviously speaks to me more.
Of course. Each time I watch Ratatouille, I think I do get more and more out of it. And I think I do connect with the themes of Ratatouille very much, and we talked about how, like, in many ways, it's sort of then a connection to, like, us as filmmakers and as creators and as artists, and there's a lot to sort of, like, sink our teeth into there. But, what then I start thinking about? I think about, how connected am I to Remy versus how connected I am to Dory. And you know what? I think I am more connected to Dory than I am to Remy. Because I think with Remy, it's not like it's not as much about, like, his, like, arc, this big transformation he goes through. It's more like the rest of the world then sort of coming around to the fact that he could be what he is. And, like, yeah, like, he does have to learn some things, but, I think that the themes and concerns of Finding Dory are closer in sync with its protagonist than they are with Ratatouille with Remy. So it got over Ratatouille.
So now it's either is it above Wall-E or below Wall-E? Because you said it's not going above Up.
I did say that. Not necessarily locked in, but I did say
Oh my god. Brian, I gotta go to bed soon.
I'm sorry. I'm really trying.
We're taking like half an hour just for this.
I'm trying to make an honest choice here, okay? So Wall-E, it's going head to head with Andrew Stanton's last film. And I feel like it's so easy to say Wall-E is above it because then it has like such strong like high artistic inklings, and I know it's sort of like it can alienate a lot of people. Some people will just not connect to it, and some people will say like it's one of the best films of the 2010s, not 2010s, the 2000s,
the decade,
the decade, yeah. Like so, it is really kind of polarizing in that sense. So there is a lot of merit to that narrative, although I think. Yeah, it's tough.
I think you know.
I think I know. And I think I wouldn't necessarily have put it this way before, but specifically from having seen these films through the countdown to Coco. I think...
Of course, the hashtag countdown.
The hashtag countdown to Coco. Not to say I was underwhelmed by Wall-E, but I just sort of became more in tune with sort of the flaws and how it's not necessarily then all, like... connected perfectly. There are definitely these very intriguing connections, but sort of again, kind of similarly with Remy, Wall-E isn't as central to the themes. Wall-E again, it doesn't really have to.
More of a surrogate than a.
More of a surrogate, which is not to say that doesn't mean inherently that a film is worse because of that, but I do think that just in terms of like the priorities, like they're much clearer in Finding Dory than they are in Wall-E. So you know what? I'll get it over Wall-E. And now it's time to decide: is it definitely below Up? And I think it is fair to say that I'm going to lock this in now. So rest easy because we're nearing the end.
We're nearing the end.
We're near.
And I never have to watch Finding Dory again.
Oh, you're never going to watch it again?
I'm probably not.
Oh no.
Unless you force me, which I'm sure will happen at some point.
I'm sure I will. So, I think with Up, it is then just sort of so powerful and like I'm just thinking about all just the imagery and the score of Michael Giacchino, and I can definitely appreciate how Thomas Newman. A lot of the films outside of Finding Nemo, I'll recognize. Oh, that's Thomas Newman because it sounds like Nemo. He did go for a different sound here, and he only calls upon the Nemo score when it's necessary to evoke the memories of what happened, like when Marlin's talking about how I'm so glad I remember. I knew there was one thing I was forgetting that I really wanted to say, and that's the point at which this movie justified its necessariness, and which we kind of like sort of alluded to this, but Dory being like, oh, like I don't know if you ever said it before, like you probably did and I just forgot. Like no you didn't forget, I never said anything. And getting at this idea, Marlin never properly showed a gratitude to Dory for all that she had done, and in that moment, that was like a teary-eye inducing moment because it did feel so impactful there. But I would still say it slots below Up because I think Up it's a very like passionate, meaningful, artistic story about this character who then has to deal with the death of a loved one and seeing that there's more to life beyond that. I think it is then ultimately more refined in how it goes about that. And with Finding Dory, it does have to deal with these sort of things of like, okay, then you have Dory's parents, and then you have like her new sort of surrogate family, and then you have her concerns with herself, and then there's Hank, and it is all sort of channeled through her perspective. But Up is. It's clear, and it is, like, I think, like a model example of, like, how to approach a film and how to approach a character arc and a moral, like, to the nth degree. So I will say, like, it's just below Up, but I think it is in a respectable position for sure. Potentially even higher than I would have anticipated putting it. But
so it's one of the better ones.
I guess so. Right. I guess so.
We're almost done. We're almost done with these.
Wow.
That's gonna be a shit.
This is crazy. Because we started recording them before the school year even started.
That's right.
It really it's been a long time coming.
It's been a long time coming.
Discoveries about ourselves, just like
And
Dory.
each other. Yeah, and it's just like, please don't compare me to that blue person.
Oh.
I won't say what I was gonna say. But anyway, all right. So is that your rank?
That is my rank.
Okay. Well, why don't you read it out from top to bottom? Bottom to top.
Okay, bottom to top. Sure.
Just out once, so we can just hear it all.
Brave, Cars 2, The Good Dinosaur, Danger Zone, A Bug's Life, Cars, Monsters Inc., Monsters University, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Finding Dory, Up, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Inside Out, Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3.
All right. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening to our discussion. Not as violent or argumentative as I thought it would be.
Yeah. I guess we were more self-reflective and willing to hear our other ways of looking at it, much like they were in Finding Dory.
Also, I really don't care about the movie. Also.
All right. Forget it. I'm going to punch you in the face right now.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening.
We were so close.
We were just so close. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Tune in for the I've never seen this film. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited to see it because supposedly it's like it makes good on the potential qualities of the first film, and completely disregards the second film.
Yay!
The Cars 3. See you guys.
Bye.